Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Dedicated Hearts made Fullmetal in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 26, Battle for Utgard Castle. The Titan horde descended upon the castle, though the majority of eyes were on the beast Titan, who continued its thunderous roar. Nanaba glared at the monster. This wasn't going to be a regular battle between humans and Titans. No, it was clear to her that they may have lost their edge, their ability to outsmart their enemy. Whoever it was, they must have organized the Titans to lay siege to the castle. That thing, it's commanding the Titans, thought Armin as he tried to observe both the incoming Titans and the beast Titan. It's another shifter with the same ability as Annie. If we're going to beat them, then we'll need to find a way to take out whoever's in that Titan. All hands, split into teams of 2. Ordered Nanaba. Do not engage a Titan on your own unless absolutely necessary. Watch my back and I'll watch over yours, said Reiner, trying to make a light-hearted comment. Yeah, of course, replied Berthold, anxious about the impending battle. Stand back, Armin, said Mikasa as she aimed her blades, the moonlight gleaming off its shiny surface. The Titans were now almost at the spikes protecting the castle walls. The larger ones lumbered into them, holding them in place just meters from the wall, but the smaller ones, the 9 meters and below, were slipping through and were now trying to climb, and it was only a matter of time before the spikes gave way to the larger Titans. All hands, charge! Yelled Nanaba as she leapt off the wall. A loud cry rang through the air as the 104th and Nanaba's squad jumped off the wall and onto the Titan horde. Connie, however, couldn't move. It felt as though his feet was nailed onto the spot. He wanted to carry out his duty alongside his comrades as they engaged the Titans, but the idea that these Titans were people from his village weighed down on his. He couldn't kill the people he grew up, the people he loved and cared about. Sasha had already jumped off. She spotted a 3-meter trying to claw at the wall and quickly swung from the side. She struck the Titan's nape, killing it instantly, hot blood splattering across the side of wall and her uniform. She swung back onto the wall and saw a clearly distressed Connie looking at the Titans with teary eyes. Connie! She called out. I can't do it, Sasha, he choked out. Using his momentum, Jean swung around an 8-meter approaching the wall. Fired his cables onto the upper part of its back, reeled himself forward and slashed at its neck. As he descended onto the ground, he was quickly made aware of the cries from his partner as he was tore apart by 2 7-meter Titans. Jean watched on, horrified at the sight. Damn it! He yelled as he fell back to the battlements. Berthold slashed at the eyes of a 9-meter Titan, blinding the monster. Reiner quickly took down the Titan during its distracted state. Great job, complimented Reiner as he wiped the blood from his face. Come on, let's take out that big one over there. He yelled, pointing at a 15-meter who was pushing itself deeper into the spikes trying to get to the wall. We've got a duty to do. Berthold stared at Reiner with a questioning look on his face for a few seconds. All right then, replied Berthold. He sounded unsure of himself, like he was wondering about something. Ymir sliced off the finger of the 9-meter Titan trying to grab her. She swung her blades at the Titan's wrist and almost severed its hand. Using her gas crystal leapt onto its head. She jumped off, fired her cables into the top part of the Titan's neck, reeled herself towards its nape and cut out a large gap into its neck. The Titan crashed into the battlements with Krista, who hopped off its parted neck. My first kill, thought Krista. Great moves, Krista, complimented Ymir playfully, really living up to the top 10 ranking. She looked at Krista with that carefree smile of hers. Now's not the time, Ymir, replied Krista, a little bit annoyed that Ymir wasn't taking the situation as deathly serious as her. Thanks anyway. Alphonse struck the neck of the 7-meter, lifting itself onto the wall. It fell back onto the ground with a loud crash. He quickly spotted a 15-meter Titan, who had broken through the spikes. Approaching him, he fired his cables onto it and leapt from the wall. The Titan swung its hands, hitting the cable and causing Alphonse to lose his balance in the air. The Titan then grabbed Alphonse by the waist. He was now caught, and it quickly let go of the handles of his ODM gear, clapped his hands and placed them on the Titan's hand. Blue sparks quickly formed around the Titan's hand and suddenly its arm was blown apart from its body. Alphonse fell back onto the battlements, the large hand cushioning his fall. Mina veered round and swung her blades at the 15-meter Titan's nape, killing it instantly, the large Titan crashing its head into the wall. She landed back onto the battlements and ran up to Alphonse. Are you all right? She asked, kneeling down. Alphonse rubbed his head. Yeah, I'm fine, he replied. Mina sighed. You know, Al, when I talked about saving your life I meant that as a joke, she said lightheartedly as she offered her hand to him. Guess that makes us even. Alphonse looked up at Mina, his eyes widened in shock. He clapped his hands together and slammed them onto the battlements, and Mina quickly looked behind her to see a 13-meter titan within less than a few feet from her, its arm reaching out to her and a spike in its neck. The titan went limp and its hand crashed into the wall. Alphonse picked himself up from the dissolving titan's palm. Guess that means we're back where we started, he joked. He turned his head towards the titans. More of them were trying to slipping though. He picked up his handles and aimed it at them. More of them heading our way. What's your kill count so far, Dot? Asked Mina as she took out new blades from her scarab. Probably close to 20, replied Alphonse. Alchemy kills don't count, ribbed Mina. Is that so? Alright then 5. Snickered Alphonse. Damn, 2 more than me. She caught sight of a smaller titan, a 3-meter slipping though, but I can catch in no time. Mikasa whirled past a 10-meter titan, slicing its neck open. She caught sight of another titan, a 5-meter with a member of the 104th within its grasp. She fired her cables onto the nape of the titan and shot herself towards it. Unlatching the hooks she whirled in the air with her blades out, striking its nape with flawless efficiency. She landed onto the ground and approached the injured scout. Thank you, cried the scout breathlessly. She picked him up and reeled themselves onto the battlements. She quickly spotted another titan, a 12-meter who had broken through the spikes. She detached her old blades from the handles and took out a pair of new ones as she stared down the approaching titan. A skinny 3-meter titan lifted itself up on the wall, peeking its head over the battlements. He never saw Armin on the other side. Armin tightly clenched his teeth and using all of his strength he swung one of his blades at the neck of the 3-meter. The blade cut through the titan's flesh like a cleaver, chopping off a chunk of meat, separating its head from the rest of its body. The 3-meter titan fell from the wall and onto the ground. Armin peered down at the decapitated titan to see a now carcass emitting a thick cloud of smoke. I did it, muttered Armin. His eyes widened and a wide smile began to form on his face. I killed a titan. He cheered. His celebration was cut short when the shadow of a 14-meter covered him. He stared at the monster which loomed over him with a sickening grin on its face. Suddenly the titan's expression turned into a pained one as it collapsed onto the ground. Jean then landed onto the battlement, next to Armin, wiping the blood from his face. Mikasa landed next to Armin after killing the 15-meter titan. She had caught sight of it just when she was about to kill the 15-meter and rushed over to save Armin. Lucky Jean was there just in time. Don't celebrate just yet, Armin, said Jean, we're still not out of the woods. Armin turns his head towards the tree line. It looked as though only a few more titans were emerging into the open. No, but it looks like they are, he replied. We may end up surviving this after all, smiled Jean. Gelger zoomed towards the 11-meter titan, its arms outstretched reaching for him. You can't catch me, yelled Gelger, you dumb piece of shit. He swung his blades and sliced off its large fingers. Nanaba veered round the large titan, fired her cables onto its nape and reeled herself forward. She spun around as she struck the titan's nape, its body falling onto the ground. They both fired their cables onto the tower and surveyed the battlefield. All around them were the smoking carcasses of fallen titans scattered around and on top of the walls. They watched as the veterans in 104th continued to fight, and below them the wounded were being dragged or carried into the castle tower and interior. The air was filled with a cacophony of yelling, cries and the sound of wires being fired. I'm impressed, Nanaba, complimented Gelger, a clean cut as usual. You shouldn't be doing moves like that, replied Nanaba disapprovingly, you'll waste your blades that way. It's just how I fight, I don't back down, Gelger replied simply. By the way, that was an assist. Nanaba laughed slightly. Sure. Lin then fired her cables and reeled herself next to them, blood dripping from her blades. Lin, status report, asked Nanaba. 19 casualties, replied Lin, 8 dead, 2 of them veterans, and 11 wounded. We've got field medics Alia and Conrad doing what they can. She turned her head towards the battle end. Looks like we're holding out so far. The enemy seem to have exhausted their forces attacking us. Heh, bastard went all in on this attack and hasn't got fuck all to show for it, taunted Gelger at the beast titan who sat watching the battle on top of Walrose. The beast titan watched impatiently and disappointed at the progress, or lack of it, that his titans were making in the assault of the castle. His fingers tapped on the edge of the wall as he contemplated his next move. What a disappointment you've all turned out to be, he thought. Still, it seems I had underestimated the skill set of these devils. These strange devices are quite ingenious, a big handicap to my forces and those defenses. He thought back to when Alphonse had formed the spikes on the ground around the castle, which now held back the larger titans and made them into immobile targets. He ceased his finger tapping and grabbed hold on the ledge, his hand breaking off a large chunk of the wall. It's getting awfully boring to watch my side get slaughtered. Let's make things a little bit more interesting, he thought as he stood up from his kneeling position, pulled back his hand holding the large chunk of wall, and with his other hand he aimed for the southern wall of the castle. "Hey, what's that sound?" asked Jean. It was a faint whistling at first, but then its intensity grew more and more by the second, catching the attention of the soldiers in the castle. "Incoming!" yelled one of the scouts. Sasha grabbed Connie, jumped off the wall. Alphonse and Mina both lunged into the sky, and Mikasa grabbed Armin and Jean by their collars and leapt off the wall before the large chunk of collided with the spike and walls, creating a wide opening for the titans to enter through. Bits of rock and people were flung into the air and onto the ground at the initial impact, sending the southern front of the castle in complete disarray. Nanaba, Gelger, and Lin watched the scene unfold before them with a look of shock on their faces. Just mere moments ago it looked as though the tide was in their favor, but now the enemy may have turned the tables on them. As the titans lumbered into the breach, the monsters began picking off the crumbled line of dazed scouts. "Well, this ain't good," said Gelger, a hint of fear in his voice. Nanaba growled in frustration. "All hands focus on southern front," ordered Nanaba. She pushed herself forward from the tower, leading the charge towards the breach. "Retake the southern wall." Alphonse began to pick himself up on all fours from the ground. He looked up to see Mina doing the same. "You all right?" he asked. "I'll be fine," she replied. She turned her head towards the breach. She gasped when she saw the titans beginning to pour in. "They're getting in." "I've got to seal that breach," thought Alphonse as he picked up his blades. He pointed his handles towards one of the titans and pulled the trigger and began to charge alongside the other scouts. Jean, Armin, and Mikasa quickly got up from the ground. Jean raised his head upwards in the direction of the beast titan. "That was a fucking cheap shot." Mikasa helped up Armin. They quickly came to the realization that titans were now entering the castle walls and the scouts now charging at the incoming horde. "Son of a bitch," muttered Jean. "We have to push them back," yelled Armin. "We have to cover Alphonse and give him enough time to rebuild that wall." The three of them charged into the fray. Sasha stuck her blade into the hand of the 5-meter, trying to grab at her. She couldn't use her ODM against it at this range and was now doing what she could to keep the titan away from her. She swung her other blade at the titan, slashing at its face as it leaned in to eat her. Suddenly the titan let out a pained cry as it collapsed onto the ground. She drew her blade from the dead titan's hand and saw Connie standing beside it with tears in his eyes and blood evaporating from his blades. "I'm so sorry," he mutters as he watched the titan's dissolving carcass. Amir slowly opened her eyes. Everything was hazy. Her vision and her hearing, it all just seemed blurry. She lazily lifted her head upwards to see a small figure with a yellow head swinging around a 5-meter titan. As her vision cleared, it soon became apparent it was Krista trying to find an opening to strike the titan, but its erratic movements made killing it a harder challenge than usual. The titan swung its hand and unintentionally hit her wire, knocking her off balance and sending her onto the ground. It then began to approach Krista, who was now trying to pick herself up. Amir's eyes widened. She quickly moved her body slightly to get up, but sudden sharp pain from her left side stopped her. She winced from the pain. She tried to move again through it, but quickly realized her left arm was being held down by something. She turned to saw that a large chunk of wall had landed on her left arm, completely crushing it. She turned back to Krista to see the titan now looming over her. Amir had never felt more terrified in years than seeing Krista about to be eaten. That when Amir noticed she was still holding onto her blade in her right hand. Krista looked up at the titan before her. She was terrified by the monster in front of her as it reached down at her. Tears fell from her closed eyes as she looked away from it. Suddenly a loud crash caught her attention. She looked up to see the titan had been slain and her hero kneeling down with their back turned to her. She quickly got up and looked over to see it was Amir, who was looking deathly pale and fatigued. That's when Krista noticed that Amir's uniform on her left side was soaking in blood and her entire left arm was missing. "You all right?" asked Amir as she struggled to breathe. "Am I all right?" cried Krista. "Amir, your entire left arm is gone." Krista took off her cloak and began tearing it in half to wrap around Amir's wound. Krista began to sob heavily as the idea that Amir could very likely die. "I'll be fine," said Amir weakly. Suddenly Connie and Sasha ran up to them, both looking at Amir with a look of shock and fear. "Oh my god!" panicked Connie. "Amir, your arm. We gotta get you inside," yelled Sasha, as Connie and Sasha tried to pick her up. Amir slowly turned her head towards the breach. She saw the Titans pouring in and the scouts trying desperately to push them back. She knew it was a matter of time before they got overwhelmed. "Wait," said Amir as she slipped through their grasp. She knelt down and faced Krista once more. "Krista, do you remember that promise we made? On the day of that snowy mountain training?" Krista nodded her head. She was at a complete loss for words. "I have no right to tell you how to live your life, but please, just for me, take back your name, live your life with pride." Amir picked up her blade with her right hand, stood up and began to charge into the Titan horde. "Amir, wait!" cried Krista. "What the hell are you doing?" yelled Connie. Amir ran past the carnage around her and, using all the strength she could summon, she leapt from the ground, pulled the trigger to her gas canisters and sent herself flying into a group of Titans coming through the breach. "Krista, I was once like you. I had once thought it would be better if I'd never been born because it looked as though the world hated me because I dared exist in it. I thought it'd be better to have just died, but what I wanted, more than anything else, was the chance." Yellow sparks suddenly began to dance around her as she zoomed towards the Titans. To be reborn, the chance to start again. A bright ball of light seemed to engulf Amir, catching everyone's attention. The chance. There was a seemingly blinding bright flash of light, an intensive gust of wind and an unbearable heat. "To live for myself." There was a high-pitched and screechy roar as a 5-meter Titan with long hair, pointed ears, pitch-black eyes and razor-sharp teeth and claws collided into the group of Titans, the force of impact knocking them down onto the ground. She pounced onto the back of a nearby 7-meter, sunk her claws into the back of its neck and tore its nape from the body. She then sprang onto another Titan, a 9-meter, clawing its eyes out before veering her head around its neck and bit down on its nape. "Amir," whispered Krista as she watched her friend mercilessly tear through the horde of Titans. "What the hell?" whispered Jean as he, Mikasa and Armin stared at the scene unfolding before them, wide-eyed and slack-jawed. That was Amir," muttered Armin. "She's a Titan shifter." "Someone tell me I'm dreaming," said Connie. "This can't be real." "Was that Amir?" muttered Mina as she and Alphonse watched the 5-meter Titan tearing apart its own kind. Both Reiner and Berthold watched the Amir with a look of astonishment and disgust. That's the Titan," stuttered Reiner, "the Titan we saw that day." The Beast Titan continued to observe the battle before him. He watched with a mixture of both curiosity and sadness as the Jaws Titan tore through the Titan horde laying siege to the castle. "Oh Marcel, how am I going to tell Porco about this, about your passing?" The Jaws Titan was now tearing apart the Titan trying to get into the castle. The assault was now crumbling. "My Titans won't be making process anytime soon, guess I'll have to do this myself." He grabbed onto the edge and swung his body around, climbing down the wall. The fighting had now raged back outside of the castle walls as Amir, backed up by a few scouts, mopped up the remaining Titans. A trail of scattered smoking Titan carcasses lay in her wake as she ripped off the head of the last Titan, a 2-meter. When the battle was over, Amir rushed back into the castle. The scouts in the courtyard began surrounding her, a look of fear and angry on their faces. Alphonse quickly ran over to the breach and repaired their once devastated defenses. Suddenly Amir burst out of the Titan's nape. The scouts around her all flinch and gasp. She pushed herself out of the body, tearing off the bits of nerve connect to her cheeks. She flopped onto the ground and pushed herself up with both arms. "Amir!" yelled Krista as she ran towards her. She threw her arms around her in a tight hug. Amir placed her arms around her smiling. Everyone began to huddle around her and Krista muttering to each other. The vast majority of them were from the 104th Souther Division. They've known Amir for years and the reality of her being a Titan shifter who had been living among them left them all completely dumbfounded and shocked. "Hey!" yelled Jean marching up to them and catching their attention. "You've got a lot of explaining to do so you better start now," he ordered. By the look on his face she could tell he was furious about this. "Amir, you're a Titan," said Connie still in a state of confused shock. "But how, and when?" "Recruit," came a voice from within the crowd. The scouts began to split, allowing Nanaba to approach Amir. Going to interrogate me? Questioned Emir as Krista let go of her. The tone of her voice suggested she was agitated for Nanaba intruding on their moment. You'll be questioned on everything in due time, replied Nanaba. Right now there's only one thing that's important. Whose side are you on? I'm on her side. Well, considering I just saved your asses, commented Emir. This is not a joking matter, recruit, replied Nanaba in an almost threatening tone. If you were really on our side, then why didn't you tell us you were a Titan shifter? You could have contributed to the regiment like Eren and the Elrics. You realize hiding your abilities from us, until now, makes you look suspicious. Emir sighed from exhaustion. Look, all you need to know is that I'm not a threat to humanity. I'll help you hold down the fort, and if we get out this alive, then I'll tell you everything. Armin looked over to Reiner and Berthold. He noticed that the pair had both flinched and looked almost terribly uncomfortable when Emir had said that. Nanaba shut her eyes for a second and sighed. This whole ordeal was complete insanity. Titans showing up in Walrose, the Titans launching a coordinated assault on them, and now a member of the 104th was a Titan shifter who came to their rescue. Fine, hope you know you're going to have to explain all this to a military tribunal. She turned to face the crowd of scouts. Round up all the injured and get them into the castle interior. I want to look out on the tower. If another wave is approaching, then I want to know where. It had only been 20 minutes after the attack. A steady stream of wounded was taken into the tower, where Alphonse worked alongside the field medics. He gently placed the head of a wounded recruit on a folded cloak. He looked down to see their entire leg had been bitten off. What was left was covered in blood-soaked bandages. The whole lower floor of the tower was cramped with people, close to over a dozen of them. What's our status? Asked Nanaba, sitting on the southern wall with Lin and Gelger. We had in total about 56 scouts with us at the start. 43 from the 104th and 13 from our squad. We're now down to about 24 still being able to fight. Most of the causalities are wounded and they're currently being treated. If the defenses don't get breached again, then we could probably hold out now that we've got a Titan on our side. Commented Gelger. The sun slowly began to rise from the east. Looks like we survived the night. He said with a smile on his face. Bastard probably wasted all his Titans on a single attack. I think that calls for a celebration. He picked up the green bottle sitting on the battlement and raised it to his mouth. Suddenly the sound of a flare being fired off captured their attention. A red column of smoke from the tower stretched across the sky and towards the south. The enemy is approaching from the south, yelled the lookout. The three of them turned around to see a large horde of Titans from the south. You've got to be fucking kidding me, yelled Gelger as he put down the bottle. An all-out attack from the south side, said Lin. This one looks like a much larger wave. All hands form up on the southern wall, ordered Nanaba. It never ends, does it? Remarked Jean as he took his spot. How much gas have you guys got left? Asked Armin. Less than half in the can, said Connie. Same here, added Jean. Bit more than that, replied Sasha. More or less, said Mikasa. Didn't even have enough time to replace my blades, said Mina, frustrated as she looked down at her slightly dulled last pair. Here, Mina, said Alphonse. He pressed his hands together and then glided them across her blades. Blue sparks flickered in the air, as the metal reformed and its sharpness was renewed. Thanks, Al, said Mina, looking up at him. We'll make do with what we've got, said Reiner. We'll all make it through this, I know we can. Emir walked onto the battlement, her left foot on the ledge and a small knife in her right hand. Krista stood by her. Krista, if you and the others want to run, then now would be a good time. No, replied Krista with an angered look on her face. I'm staying here, we're seeing this through. Together. The Titans were now at the spikes again. Emir pounced from the wall and cut her hand with the knife. A large orb of light consumed her and out sprang her 5-meter Titan, letting out his high-pitched roar. She began slashing away at the Titans, wounding them so that the scouts could finish them off. Everyone, charge! Yelled Nanaba. The scouts once more leapt from the walls and descended onto confused Titans. Emir continued the slash away at the Titans. She clawed at the cheek of a 12-meter and pinned it face first into the ground, allowing Krista to go in for the kill. You ugly fucks! Yelled Gelger as he cut into the neck of a 9-meter. Can't you just quit? Emir tore off the nape of a 13-meter Titan she had pinned to the ground. Tossing the chunk of dissolving flesh aside, she then spotted it, the 17-meter tall Titan covered in fur, the giant monkey-like Titan, the one commanding the Titan army. "Stay here," growled Amir at Krista. "Wait, did she just talk?" exclaimed Connie, who had overheard her. Armin hacked at the ankle of the 10-meter, Mikasa swerved round and slashed at its nape. As the Titan fell, he landed upon the battlements with Mikasa and looked upon the battlefield to see the fur-covered Titan approaching the castle. "It's here." "Mikasa, that Titan is a shifter," he said, keeping his voice low enough so that only they could hear it. "It has the same ability as Annie. If we could take it out, then the Titan assault becomes leaderless." He looked back at the fur-covered Titan attacking. It won't be easy, he thought, but maybe he looked at Amir, who was staring down the same Titan. Maybe Amir could challenge it. Amir charged the beast Titan. She let a high-pitched roar as she sprang towards it with her sharp claws ready to strike. The beast Titan reeled back its arm and swung it at the Jaws Titan, its fist striking the Jaws Titan's body and sending it flying to the side and crashing into the ground. Amir quickly got up. The left side of her Titan's body had now caved in, but she was still determined to take the Beast Titan down. She charged the Beast Titan once more. The Beast Titan swung its fist again, but this time she dodged the attack and slashed at its body, her claws tearing into its flesh. She turned back around only to see the Beast Titan's other arm descending down upon her. It grabbed her by the head, picked her up and slammed her into the ground. It then grabbed her by the neck and raised her up so that they were eye level. Amir clawed at his hand trying to escape, but the Beast Titan's hand had hardened with a crystal coating. "You're not worthy of the Jaws Titan, of Marcel's Titan." He slammed her into the ground once again and again, and again, and again and again. Amir cried Krista as she watched Beast Titan destroyed her. The Beast Titan reeled back an unconscious Jaws Titan and flung her towards the wall. "Everybody, get back!" yelled Nanaba. Most of the scouts were able to fall back into the courtyard of the castle. However, more than a few were caught in the collision. This time the entire southern wall had been destroyed. Amir's body lay at the center of the courtyard among the large chunks of rubble around her. The Titans then began to pour in. Most of them were descending upon Amir, tearing away at her to reach the person inside. Amir cried Krista as she ran towards her. "Please, I still have to tell you." "Krista, wait!" yelled Mina. "Don't run off!" yelled Sasha. The Beast Titan watched on as what was left of his Titan army poured into the massive hole. He was about to approach the castle when suddenly he caught sight of a few green flares on the east reinforcements. "Looks like the battle is theirs," he sighed in disappointment. "Well, it can't be helped." The Beast Titan then sat down on the ground and a shifter emerged from its nape. He climbed down from the Titan and towards the nearby woods where a Titan on 4 legs was waiting for him. "Damn it!" muttered Lin as she painfully got off from the ground. "Looks like we've been beat," said Gelger, more angry than afraid. Nanaba looked around. There looked to be only 14 scouts still standing. She gripped the handles of her blade and stood up from the ground. "No, this isn't over. As long as we keep putting up a fight, we haven't been beaten yet," she declared. "All scouts form up on me. Protect the wounded." What was left of the 104th Southern Division and the veterans formed up into a thin line. "I signed up knowing I'd probably die someday, just never thought it'd be this soon," remarked Connie. He had the same look on his face the day Erwin asked them to dedicate their hearts. "At least I got to see my dad before I died," thought Sasha. Jean turned his head towards the tower and the castle interior which housed his wounded comrades. "If the Titans get through, then they'll be slaughtered." He thought back to Marco's death and how unceremoniously he died. Jean gritted his teeth and gripped the handles of his blades till his knuckles were white. "No. Not again." Berthold placed his blade on his hand, contemplating whether he should go through with shifting. Krista ran up to Amir. Suddenly a 7-meter Titan approached her. The look on her face was one of utter contempt for the monster as she aimed her handles at it. Nothing was going to separate her from Amir. Suddenly a blurry figure struck the Titan from behind, killing it instantly. The figure then landed, crouching on a piece of large rubble with his back turned towards them. He calmly stood up and turned his head back slightly to face the remaining scouts. "Captain Levi!" yelled Nanaba. "Nanaba, you and the 104th stay back," he asked. His authoritative tone did much to reassure them. He turned back to face the Titan horde. "We'll handle it from here." As if on K, a cascade of scouts rained down upon the Titans, their blades drawn ready to strike at them. The 104th and the rest of the veterans burst out into a loud cheer as the reinforcements cut down the remaining Titans. "Rear guard, secure a perimeter," ordered Hang, pointing her blade to the left. She suddenly caught sight of Eren. To her right, launching himself off his horse. "Hey, wait a minute!" The sound of more cables being fired off from her left caught her attention as she watched Ed leap from his horse too. "Damn it, you two, you're not part of the offensive." Ed zoomed towards an 11-meter and carved out a hole in its nape. Using its shoulder as a stepping stone, he landed onto the battlement. Skidding slightly before coming to a complete stop, he frantically turned his head side to side looking for Alphonse in the ruins of the castle L. He called out, "Where are you, brother?" yelled Alphonse, waving his blade in an attempt to signal his location. Once Ed had spotted him among the other scouts, he felt a wave of relief overcome him. Aaron fired his cables onto the upper back of a 15-meter Titan. He reeled himself forward. "Die!" he yelled as he struck the nape of the Titan. "I did it! My first kill for the books!" His celebration was cut short when his cables got tangled together while he was still in the air. He tumbled onto the ground and landed painfully into a small pile of rubble. "Idiot!" yelled one of the scouts. "You were told to stay back." "Right, I'm sorry, sir," apologized Aaron. "Ouch." "Hey, Aaron," came a voice to his left. He turned to see it was Connie with Sasha, Reiner, and Berthold. The once tense battle that hung from a knife's edge had now turned into a slaughter as the remaining Titans were quickly eliminated. The castle was now a mass graveyard of smoking Titan carcasses. A small crowd formed around the Jaws Titan as Hang, Levi and Krista worked to pull her out of her mangled Titan while Aaron, Alphonse, Ed, Mikasa, Armin, Jean, Reiner, Sasha, Mina, Connie, Berthold and other scouts watched. "Emir's a Titan?" asked Aaron dumbfounded as he stared at Emir. Her right arm and left leg had been tore off and there was no telling what internal damages she had. "Believe me, we were just as shocked as you are," replied Jean. Ed began to look around at the group watching Emir. "Just how many Titan shifters are there?" Krista cradled Emir's head gently in her hand. "Emir," she called out softly. Emir opened her eyes ever so slightly. My real name, is Historia." Emir slowly shut her eyes as a small smile formed on her lips. Once the dust had settled, the first priority was to move the wounded into Walsina. The remaining scout officers quickly decided to transport their surviving comrades to Hermina district. The scouts began to load their wounded comrades onto wooden carriages. Emir was placed in a small wagon by herself, a green blanket covering her and her scout cloak folded into a pillow. The group of Hang, Levi, Nanaba, Aaron, Ed, Alphonse, Mikasa and Armin met up on the top of the tower. "So you're saying there is no breach in Walrose?" asked Levi. "No, the whole thing is intact," replied Nanaba. "Well then, this complicates things," said Hang. "Reiner and Berthold are still the key suspects and it raises the question on how the Titans got in Walrose. During the battle we encountered this Titan. It was 17 meters tall and covered in fur. It had controlled the Titans through its screams, similar to the ability of Annie Leonhardt," said Nanaba. "If I had to guess, I'd say he's behind this whole attack." Squad leader Hang, "I think I know where the Titans came from," said Armin. "Connie talked about how his village was destroyed by the Titans, but yet they didn't find any bodies, and he and Jean both heard a Titan speak, and that's not the worst part, the Titan was said to look like his mother." Hang, Nanaba, Ed, Aaron and Alphonse were aghast by the revelation. Even Levi's face twitched slightly. "What you're saying is that the Titans are humans?" asked Hang. "Yes, and the Titans inside Walrose are likely the ones from Connie's village," answered Armin. This makes sense," added Hang as she came to a sudden epiphany. "A Titan's weak spot, no matter the size class, is always 1 meter down and 10 centimeters across, and those kinds of measurements are almost identical to the average human spine and brain. You've always cut open the necks of Titans we captured, but you've never found anything similar to that," said Levi. "True, but it could be a possibility that the spine and brain may have been absorbed into the Titan's body," replied Hang. "So what you're saying is that for years the monsters I've sworn to eradicate were actually humans?" asked Levi as he stared at the floor. Ed and Alphonse both thought back to all the Titans they'd killed. Edward tried to shake off the feeling of disgust with himself. He thought back to when the truth told him about the war on another world. When they accepted the mission, he struggled to make peace with the reality that if he was to fight he might have to end someone's life, but now that he discovered the Titans were humans, it seemed as though he was struggling to come to terms with the pile of corpses, from the Titans he's slain, on which he now stood on. Alphonse, however, felt sick to his stomach. While he'd never say it, a part of him was glad the enemy were titans because it meant he wouldn't have to kill a person but instead monsters. All he could feel in the moment was shame as he thought back to that feeling of pride as he killed his first titan, his first human being. "Tell me, Elrix, are you willing to take a life in order to complete this goal?" asked the Truth. Neither Edward nor Alphonse looked at the Truth as he questioned them. Instead they stood there staring into the door of truth, into this other world they've now tactility agreed to get involved in. "Or do you intend to stick to your principles?" questioned the Truth. "We'll work as we go," said Edward, still not looking back at the Truth. The Truth placed its head on its hand and began to softly laugh. "Oh boys, I've kept an eye on this world for more than a few of its centuries. If you think you can succeed in your mission without making compromises larger than the ones you've made in your world, then you're going to find yourself at a very large disadvantage." Armin looked at both Levi and the Elrics. He could tell that his theory had disgusted them and that they were uncomfortable with the idea that they've been killing people the entire time. "There's still no hard proof about the theory," said Armin. "I could be wrong. In fact, for now let's just assume that I am." "We'll discuss this further another time then, with Commander Erwin," said Hang. "Right now we need to decide what to do about Ymir and the situation with Reiner and Berthold." "She agreed to cooperate with us after the battle," said Nanaba. When Ymir had said that she'd explain everything, I noticed Reiner and Berthold both looked uneasy. Added Armin. Aaron looked to the floor with a somber expression. He had thought that both Reiner and Berthold were clear of the charges, but now they looked to be key suspects once more, and now there was further confirmation of it. "How do we take them to Stohess without raising the alarm then?" asked Levi. "I imagine that both Reiner and Berthold won't let Ymir divulge any information," said Armin. "No doubt they'll follow Ymir if we bring her to Stohess," said Armin. "But so will Historia and the others." "But Krista is going to follow her too, and all the other guys," exclaimed Aaron. "If the plan fails, then they'll be caught in the middle." "Believe me, I don't like this idea as much as you do," said Armin, saddened by what he was suggesting. "But if we brought them along, then I doubt Reiner and Berthold suspect a trap. Having others who are just as in the dark about this as them would give us some cover." "I don't like this," said Edward, "putting those guys in the fray again after all this," he said, gesturing towards the ruined castle below them. "There has to be a better way which places less people in danger," added Alphonse. "Their scouts," countered Levi, "putting their lives on the line at a moment's notice is what they've signed up to do. I say we go with Armin's plan." Though in truth he wasn't too fond of the idea either. "We'll do everything in our power to make sure this goes off without a hitch," said Hang, trying to reassure them. "We just need to get them underground, then we're in the clear. I'll send a runner to Stohess and inform the local authorities to begin evacuating the residents. We'll also take the long way to buy them more time." "I thought only Commander Erwin had those powers?" asked Edward. "Of course, the message came from Commander Erwin," said Hang, tapping on her nose with a sly smile on her face. "Then it's settled," said Levi. "Ymir will act as the bait and your friends as the cover. I'll take the rest of my squad and the 104th and escort the wounded," said Nanaba. "Good luck with the rest of the mission." She saluted the group, placing her fist onto the left side of her chest. The rest of them saluted back. As Reiner filled up some empty gas canisters, he looked up at the tower where the scout officers, the Elrics, and his friends talked. He wondered about the conversation they had to warrant secrecy from everyone else, and weirder still why Armin and Mikasa were in on it. He turned back to face the wagon Ymir was lying in. Krista sat with her. Berthold was sitting next to him, replacing his blades in his scarab. "We should do it," said Reiner in a slightly angered hushed tone. "What?" asked Berthold, confused. "Capture them, Aaron, Ymir, Historia, and the Elrics. They're all here in one location. We can end this right here and now." "No, wait," said Berthold desperately. He looked around at all the wounded members of the 104th being loaded onto wagons. "We can't. The scout reinforcements have already arrived and Captain Levi is with them. Everyone's already on high alert, so we won't have the drop on them." Reiner looked at Berthold with an almost bitter expression. Berthold sighed. "Please just, not now. We'll try and talk to Ymir first." Reiner turned away from him and walked up to Historia carrying 2 scarabs full of blades with their gas canisters attached. "Here's the rest of your gear," said Reiner in an overtly friendly tone. "You all right, Krista?" "I'm fine, just a little tired," replied Historia. "And my name's not Krista, it's Historia." "Oh right," Sorry, replied Reiner, you know, Emir's lucky to have someone like you close to her. You're a good person and an even better friend. You should probably get some sleep, it's a long way to Stohess. Thank you, Reiner, said Historia weakly, smiling at him. You really are our big brother. Reiner turned around to face Berthold. The bitter look on his face was replaced with a lighter expression. Hey Berthold, what's wrong? He asked, confused by the baffled look on Berthold's face. He then noticed his friends walking up to him. So you guys are coming along also? Yes, Emir's our friend too, said Sasha. If what Nanaba says is true, that Emir will be put in front of a military tribunal, then we'll need to be there to support her, said Mina. Also I just want to know what the hell is going on, added Connie. We don't even know if they'll let us go with her first, said Jean. They then caught squad leader Hang walking up to the wagon, and she placed her hand at the side and peered inside. Is she all right? She asked Historia. I don't know, replied Historia. You're coming along with us? Hang asked. Yes, squad leader. Squad leader, said Reiner as he saluted her. If I may, we'd dash. You guys want to come along too? Interrupted Hang. The group nodded at her. She gave them a sympathetic smile. All right, get in the wagon over there. It's a long trip, so get some sleep. We'll reach Stohess at around midnight. Hey Al, said Ed, grabbing on the shoulder. You've had a rough night. Why don't you go with them and get some rest? I'll take your horse with me. Thank you, brother, replied Alphonse. He walked up to the wagon. Reiner folded his cloak and placed it at the side of the wagon. Resting his back on it, he turned his head off to the side and spotted a lone scout riding off to the east. Both Sasha and Connie were fast asleep, their heads resting on Jean's shoulders as he drifted off. Armin rested his head on Mikasa's shoulder. Berthold fell asleep cross-legged with his head dangling off the side and his neck resting on his cloak, which was covering the side of the wagon, and Alphonse sat in the corner of the wagon, his arms crossed and his head turned slightly to the side, and next to him was Mina, with her head resting on her knees, using her folded cloak as a pillow. Historia still sat next to Emir, staring at her sleeping figure with worried eyes. Night had already fallen over the small scout convey. The raven sky was bathed in a blanket of small bright stars, and little bright yellow flickering embers outlined the walls of Stohess. Hey! Yelled Levi as he banged his fist onto the side of the wagon. Wake up, we're at Stohess. The small group opened their eyes from their slumber, feeling groggy as they were abruptly woken. Get your gear on, the gate's sealed until Walrose's interior has been deemed clear, so we'll have to climb. As they arrived at the outer wall of Stohess, convey dismounted, the small group placed their scarabs and ODM gear back onto themselves. Being wedged between you two was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my entire life, growled Jean to Sasha and Connie. I don't know what you're talking about, but I slept fine, joked Connie as Sasha laughed. Just for a moment he had forgotten about the horrors he witnessed and the fate of his family. Hang lifted up the cloak covering Emir. Most of her external injuries were almost fully. Her right arm and left leg, which had been tore off, had returned with the exception of the top hand of her foot and fingers. She's still unconscious, said Hang. Bring over the stretcher. Historia, Armin, and Aaron lowered her onto the stretcher and fastened belts around her to be lifted up. All right, I'll see you guys up on the wall, said Reiner as he fired his cables. The hooks from the crane on top of the walls were lowered down and attached to the stretcher carrying Emir. She was then slowly lifted up. Hey, said Levi to one of the scouts, find a place to tie up the horses. He then turned to the group. You guys, up the wall, come on, get moving. They fired their cables onto the walls and reeled themselves upwards. Aaron pulled himself onto the top of the large wall. He turned to see Reiner, standing next to Berthold, staring off into the distance of Stohess with a bewildered look on his face. What's going on? Thought Reiner as he stared into the unusually dimly lit city. Where is everyone? This place should be packed with refugees and people. Then it hit him, the secret meeting, the lone rider heading off in the same direction before them, and now a seemingly almost empty Stohess. His eyes widen. It's a trap. But how did they? Then he remembered the interview with Hang after the expedition about Annie. They caught her, that's how Armin got in on it. Ed took Alphonse's hand as he helped him up the wall. Historia and Mina carried the stretcher onto the middle of the wall. The whole group was now on the top of the outer wall of Stohess. Aaron, said Reiner in a deathly serious tone, did she tell you? Aaron felt his stomach drop at the question. What do you mean she? He asked, trying to act confused. Annie Reiner stated clearly, allowing everyone to hear him. Mikasa, Armin, Ed, Alphonse, Hang, Levi and the other scouts froze in place. Jean, Connie, Sasha, Mina, and Historia could sense the tension in the air through the almost deathly silence around them. "I don't know what you mean, Reiner," said Eren, breaking the silence. A bead of sweat ran down his forehead. "What do you mean has Annie told me?" Reiner sighed. I'm such a fucking idiot. He said, his voice sounded as if he was both frustrated and saddened about something. "I've been here for too long, 3 years of living in this hell, surrounded by idiots." All eyes were on him. Berthold, who was standing next to him, looked distressed. "We were just kids, we didn't know about anything. I've allowed my resolve to weaken, and it's all because I had to meet you bastards." He attaches a blade onto his handle. "To hell with this, I don't know what's right anymore, but I will face up to what I've done." He places the blade's edge on the palm of his hand and slices it open. Bright yellow sparks appear around him. Eren watches in complete abject shock. The other members of the 104th, who weren't in on the plan, all felt their stomachs drop as they caught sight of the bright sparks around Reiner. "As a warrior, and I will fulfill my duty." "Reiner!" exclaims Berthold. "Right here? Now? We're doing this?" "Yes. Right here, right now, we are settling this," proclaims Reiner as he walks towards Eren. Bright yellow sparks of light continued to appear around him. Eren watched in complete abject shock. Mikasa sneaks up from behind Eren, leaps around him and slashes at Reiner. He raises his arms to defend himself, only to have his right arm cut off and the blade buried in his left. Berthold panicked as he watched Reiner get attacked, but that did not stop him from noticing the sound of running footsteps behind him. He turns his head to see Captain Levi, who had snuck up on him from behind during Reiner's speech, charging towards him. Levi swings his blade at Berthold's neck, aiming to behead the tall traitor. Berthold quickly steps back, ducks slightly to dodge the attack and raises his hands up to protect himself. He barely avoids Levi's killing strike, but he wasn't totally out of reach from the attack. Levi's blade severs both of Berthold's hands from his wrists and slashes at his eyes. Berthold falls to the floor crying in agony as blood begins to pour from his wrists and eye sockets. Mikasa tries to swing her other blade, aiming for his neck, but misses completely. Reiner quickly sidesteps and kicks Mikasa off the wall into Stohess. He turns his head to see Levi walk up to Berthold, who was desperately trying to crawl away from him. He stomps on Berthold's neck, pinning him to the spot, and raises his blade ready to pierce into his heart. "For all the lives you've taken, you son of a bitch." Levi was ready to end Berthold's life, but Reiner charges in and knocks Levi off of the wall into Walrose's interior. "Berthold!" exclaims Reiner, looking down at his wounded friend. He quickly places himself in front of his grievously wounded friend and stared down his former comrades, who looked at the two of them with pained expression of shock and terror. The 104th watch as the yellow sparks began to appear once more around the two of them, the bright flashes of light growing more and more intense with each second. Eren watched, frozen in place by his immense feeling of shock, sorrow, and betrayal, as more of the people he looked up to reveled themselves to be the monsters who ruined his life. Suddenly Edward grabs Eren by the back of his collar and quickly drags him further away from them before two large bolts of lightning struck the floor, sending them both flying and tumbling further down the wall. An almost colossal gust of wind sends everyone flying back, and Ymir carried off into the air. The torches which had lit up the wall were quickly blown out, yet the top of the wall seemed to be set ablaze by the mass explosion of bright light. The hellish heat and smoke had made the air almost unbearable. Eren clung onto the rail tracks of the wall. He moves his head upwards to see the colossal titan raise its skinless head from the thick cloud of smoke, letting out a roar which shook the very earth itself. It raised its hand up, its enormous arm leaving those under it in total darkness from its shadow under the moonlight for a good few seconds as it grabbed Ymir with its monstrously large hands. "Ymir!" cried Historia as she saw her friend caught in the hand of the colossal titan. Suddenly the smoke in front of them parts as the armored titan begins to advance towards him, cracking the wall with every footstep. Ed, Alphonse, and the scouts all stare at the monster before them. Its large muscular form was covered by cream-colored plating with only thin lines of red muscle between them, and it looked at them with its brilliant yellow eyes. It reaches out to grab Eren but is stopped when two spikes rapidly jut out of from the floor and pierce the armor titan plating, stopping him in his tracks. Eren turns his head to the side to see Ed with his hands placed down on the floor, glaring at the armored titan with gritted teeth. Eren turned back to the armored and colossal titans, Tears being blown from his eyes, he shut them and thought about those happier years in the cadet corps. Berthold. Reiner. He reopened his eyes. There was an insatiable fire behind them as he got up from the ground, placed his clenched fist into his mouth and bit down. You damn traitors! There was a blindingly bright explosion of light. The scouts covered their eyes as Eren was engulfed in a large mass of muscle and skin. Ed lowered his hand to see a familiar 15-meter-tall muscular titan with piercing green eyes, black oily hair and jagged teeth. It let out a vicious roar before charging towards the armored titan, tackling him off the spikes and sending them both flying off the wall and into Stohes. Chapter 27, The Clash. As the armored titan and Eren's titan descended into Stohes, Eren swung his fist at the armored titan's head, pushing him further down, before they both crashed onto the buildings below, dust and debris being thrown into the air and the ground cracking under the weight of the two titans. Mikasa could only watch as the two of them plummeted into the floor. Eren. She yelled out. As the dust settled, she caught sight of the armored titan, Reiner's titan, lying on the ground. Why didn't I cut his head off? She thought to herself, why couldn't I kill him? She thought back on the fight not a minute ago. She had held back when she launched her attack and now her hesitation had cost them dearly. I can't let that happen again. Eren's titan quickly got up to his feet as the armored titan causally got up to his. Eren charged in with a hard right hook as the armored titan was on its knees. Its fist collided with the armored titan's face, but the only damage done was to Eren's hand. His fingers were crushed on impact with the armor plating. The armored titan pushed Eren back slightly and launches his own punch. The fist connects to Eren's face and sends him flying into a line of houses. The scouts stared in abject shock at the colossal titan before them. Even though only the upper half of its body had formed, its massive size towered over them. They were but mere bugs in its presence. Levi rushes over to them. Is everyone all right? He asks. Eren's off to fight Reiner, replied Ed, turning his head in the general direction of the two. Jean clenched his teeth. He attached the blades to his handles and charged off the wall, going after Eren and the armored titan. Jean, wait! Yelled Connie as he took his eyes off the colossal titan for a second to watch his friend jump off the wall. He quickly turned his attention back to Berthold. I just... What the hell is going on? He exclaimed. The colossal titan pulls back its arm, his palm outstretched, and swings towards the scouts in a sweeping motion. Everybody off the wall, now! Yelled Levi. As the enormous hand dropped down towards them, the scouts scuttled off the wall. In their panic, Edward and Alphonse ran off in opposite direction from each other. Ed, Levi, Hang, the 104th and a bunch of other scouts had thrown themselves into Stohes. The colossal titan hand crashed into the wall from the side of Wall Rose's interior and skid its arm across Wall Sina. Chunks of rock were tossed into the sky. The group fired their cables onto the side of the wall. It's got Ymir, cried Historia as she caught sight of Ymir in the colossal titan's clutches. He's got another person, yelled one of the scouts. All of them quickly turned their attention to its other hand. Ed's stomach dropped, his eyes widened to its fullest extent and his jaw almost fell off its hinges as he caught sight of it. L. He yelled as he saw Alphonse caught in the clutches of the colossal titan's skinless hand. Alphonse didn't respond, he looked to be unconscious. What Ed saw next almost made him throw up. The colossal titan then threw both Ymir and Alphonse into his gigantic mouth, devouring the two, its mouth closing shut with a sickening chomp. Krista's eyes widened as she watched Ymir being locked inside the colossal titan's mouth. She was at a complete loss for words. Berthold, muttered Armin. Even though he knew Berthold was the colossal titan, the dramatic revelation and horrific turn of events still left him in a state of shock. No. It can't be, muttered Sasha, distressed by their betrayal. Berthold. Reiner, whispered Mina, completely dismayed. How could you? Ed was almost on the brink of breaking down into tears, until he felt a burning heat within him. It was pure white-hot rage, the same kind of anger and hatred he felt for Shao Tucker after he transmuted Nina and Alexander. He gripped the handles of his gear so hard his knuckles threatened to stick out of his skin as he glared daggers at the colossal titan. Levi bit down on his lower lip as he observed the colossal titan. You didn't kill them, he thought. No, you need them and Eren alive. Suddenly the colossal titan swings its left arm at them, in an effort to squash the scouts on the other side. Everyone drop now, yells Levi. the group detach their cables from the wall and narrowly avoid the colossal titan hand trying to squish them like bugs. As he brings back his hand, the crushed body of one of the scouts fell to the ground before them and a massive crack in the wall was shown. "Hang!" yelled Levi, catching her attention. "You led Team 1 and the 104th and distract him. I'll lead Team 2 and go in for the dash." He was interrupted by the sound of cables being fired and gas being forced out of the exhaust. They quickly turned their attention to Edward, who had shot himself upwards into the air, charging towards the colossal titan. Historia quickly followed suit. There was a burning fire in her eyes as she charged forward, determined to either save Amir or avenge her. "What the hell?" exclaimed Hang as they watched them zoom off towards the colossal titan. Hang narrowed her eyes and let out an angered growl. "Soldiers, go now, attack the colossal titan," she ordered. "Those damn brats," growled Levi. They quickly leapt from the wall, their gas propelling them upwards into the air. "Kill the colossal titan," ordered Hang. "That monster is humanity's greatest enemy. It must not be allowed to live." Ed and Historia zoomed towards the colossal titan. The enormous monster swung its gigantic fist at them, but they easily maneuvered his sluggish attack by swirling around his enormous arm. "Too slow, you giant piece of shit," taunted Ed. He flew past its face, the two of them catching each other glances. Berthold felt a small pang of fear as he caught a glimpse of the anger he saw on Ed's face. He shifted eyes towards Historia, who was just trailing behind Edward, before his vision suddenly turned black. "What?" thought Berthold. Levi flew past the colossal titan's gaze. His blades and the right side of his uniform was soaked in the blood of the colossal titan as he sliced its eyeballs, leaving a large cut where two large eyes should be. "I need 2 people to go for the jaw. Retrieve Alphonse and Amir," he ordered. "The rest of you, kill this son of a bitch." "Damn it," thought Levi, "this isn't what I had in mind. Something's gonna go wrong." Mina and Sasha fired their cables into the hinges of the jaw and reeled themselves forward, their blades ready to strike, while Armin and Connie fired their cables onto the top lip of the colossal titan, ready to snatch Demir and Alphonse from its mouth. "So you were the one staring down on us that day, Berthold." Ed flew past the neck and was now behind the colossal titan. He spun around, fired his cables onto the nape of its neck and tilted his blades ready to cut an opening. He caught sight of the other scouts around him swarming its nape. Ed pulled the trigger and quickly reeled himself forward. He wanted to be the first one there, to drag Berthold out into the open and beat him to a bloody pulp. "He's wide open," yelled Hang. "Go for the nape." They quickly descended into the colossal titan. It looked as though victory was at hand and they were now about to rid themselves of the biggest threat to humanity. Suddenly a furious gust of steam burst from the colossal titan's body, pushing back the scouts, disrupting their attack and leaving them suspended in the air. The steam was unbearable. It felt as though they were being cooked alive and the air seemed to set fire to their lungs as they tried to breathe. "Everyone, fall back," ordered Hang as she detached her blades from the nape, allowing herself to be carried off by the steam. The rest of the scouts followed suit. Ed wanted to press the trigger to pull himself forward and continue on with the attack, but the hellish heat forced him to fall back. The scouts broke through the smoke and onto the top of the wall. They were drenched in the condensation and some had sustained burn injuries from their exposure to the steam attack. "My hand," groaned one of the scouts. "Are you guys all right?" asked Connie, as he looked towards his friends. "We're fine," coughed Sasha as she helped Mina off the ground. They all looked back at the colossal titan. "Damn you, Berthold," whispered Mina, as a mixture of both the bitterness of being defeated by her enemy and the sadness of fighting a person she once considered her friend overcame her. She thought back to Annie, who must be terrified at the sight. Mina remembered that she was part of the refugees that came in from Wal Maria that day. How am I going to tell her? She thought. Ed broke through the smoke and rolled onto the floor. He quickly picked himself up and fired his cable at the colossal titan once more, but the intense gust of steam forced the steel hooks to go off to the side. The colossal titan was now untouchable. "Ow!" Ed cried. Suddenly he felt someone kick him in the back of his knee, forcing him to fall onto his knees. "Idiot," said Levi in his calm yet authoritative tone, "you just had to run off, didn't you? We could have had that bastard's head on a plate if you'd had just stayed put and acted as a unit. The same goes for you too, brat," he said, turning his attention to Historia, who looked onto the floor with an immense feeling of guilt filling her. Ed punched the floor. He was completely frustrated with himself for rushing off. He slowly picked himself up again and huddled around Hang and Levi. "Is he trying to vanish again?" asked Hang as she observed the colossal titan. No, this is different, replied Armin. He disappeared completely last time. This is prolonged. It's like he's trying to protect himself with the steam, and because of that we can't touch him. Got any ideas on what to do, Hang? Asked Levi. Hang looked to the ground with a bitter expression on her face. Nothing. She replied to a crowd scouts shocked at what she was suggesting. He can't keep this up forever. His body's going to burn out at some point, and until then we'll just have to bide our time till the right moment comes. Levi, you take over the fight against the Colossal Titan. Teams 2, 3, 4 and the 104th will be under your command. Got it, replied Levi. Team 1 and Ed, you're on me, she said as she walked towards the edge of the wall. We're going after the armored titan. She, Ed and a group of scouts leapt off the wall and plummeted into Stohes. Ed looked back at the colossal titan's mouth. I'll come back for you, L. Everyone huddle up, ordered Levi, waving them over to him. Here's the plan, we're gonna surround the bastard. Team 2 and 3, I want you at the flanks. Team 4, I want you at the rear. When the time comes, Team 2 and 3 will swarm the bastard and act as a distraction while Team 4 goes for the kill, and brats, I want you at the front. Your job will be to rescue Emir and Alphonse, understood? Yes sir, replied the scouts. Good. Also, if you have the opportunity, kill him, we're not taking prisoners anymore. In the piles of rubble, Aaron's titan lay motionless as his titan body tried to recover from the devastating blow the armored titan dealt him. His whole body was giving off thick clouds of steam as it tried to repair itself. The armored titan got up to its feet and stared at Aaron's titan body lying in the rubble of the marble buildings before walking over to him, seemingly assured of its victory. Reiner. You're a real piece of shit, thought Aaron bitterly as the memories of their years in the cadet corps came back to him. You'd always talk about what it meant to be a soldier, always talking about honor, duty, responsibility. Who knew you were talking out of your ass the entire time? All that time in hand-to-hand fighting you were holding back? Aaron tried to move his arms, but all he could do was twitch slightly. It felt as if his body was being held down by heavy weights. I always saw you as the best of us. You were strong, reliable, you could always keep a cool head no matter what, and you always put your comrades first without exception. The ground cracked beneath the weight of the armored titan as he closed in on Aaron's titan. Damn you! I looked up to you. All I ever wanted was to be like you. Mikasa fired his cables onto the nape of the armored titan. She zoomed towards it with her blades ready to strike. She whirled through the air and struck the heavily plate nape. However, the attack did absolutely nothing. Instead, her blades broke on impact, leaving only the stubs connected to her handles. However, Jean still followed her example. He fired his cables onto the armored titan's nape, reeled himself forward and slashed his blades at its nape, his own blades splintering into pieces. They landed onto one of the roofs of the houses, only just a few meters from the armored titan. Damn it! We can't do shit against him! Yelled Jean as he stamped his foot on the tiles. Those bastards, he growled, thinking about Reiner and Berthold. Suddenly the sound of cables zipped to the side catches their attention. It was Ed. What's happening? He asks as he observed the armored titan. We can't stop him, it's like nothing seems to hurt him, replied Mikasa. Not Aaron's attacks, not our blades, his whole body's covered. They watched as the armored titan continued its advance towards Aaron unhindered. Aaron! She yelled, trying to alert him. Hey blockhead! Yelled Jean, get the hell out of there! Aaron sharply awoke from his dream state and moved his eyes forward towards the armored titan. A familiar feeling of rage quickly began to boil inside him. Reiner, I don't know what's going through your mind right about now, but I hope you two know. Aaron's hands quickly regenerated his hand and clenched it into a fist. He thought back to the day 5 years ago when he saw the colossal titan over the gate of Shiganshina, the armored titan breaking the gate of Wall Maria and his mother being eaten in front of him. That you two are worse than scum. I doubt there's a person in the history of mankind that has done anything even close to the crimes you've committed. Aaron's titan rose from the ground in an almost zombie-like state. Mikasa quickly swapped out her blades and was about to charge off again until Jean grabbed her cloak, stopping her. Wait, Mikasa! He yelled. The three of them watched wide-eyed as Aaron came to a standing position. You're nothing but a pest, a disgusting bug. It makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about all that pride and heroic bullshit that spewed from your mouth. You make me want to vomit. Aaron's titan pulled back his right arm, preparing to throw another hard punch to Reiner's face. You, Berthold, Annie, the titans, you're nothing but disgusting vermin. He threw a hard right punch, his fist colliding with the armored titan's face, pushing the armored titan's head slightly to the side. "And I will wipe you out." The armored titan seems to absorb the blow to his face and threw his own punch to Eren, shattering his jaw and knocking him straight into the air. Mikasa, Jean, and Edward gasp at the punch and the sheer strength behind its impact. "Minister!" yelled out one of the cultists, "We must leave." The mayor had ordered an evacuation. Suddenly the sound of muffled boom was heard outside the church, causing the cultist to flinch. "Just hold on," replied Minister Nick as he gathered his books and the fragments of rock from the wall. He wasn't about to let any of this out of his sight. With the scouts in the city, he knew that a certain curious scout officer could be with them, and she just might try and take more items from the church like she had done last time if they find out about the secret. Suddenly there was a loud crash as a 15-meter titan landed on top of the church, squashing the cultist who accompanied Minister Nick under the massive muscular body. Nick ducks his head trying to cover himself from debris. Nick lowers his arms to see chunks of rubble and shards of colored glass lying around him and a large titan with half its face caved in front of him. Impossible!" he exclaims. Ed, Mikasa, and Jean watched horrified at the Eren's inability to damage the armored titan. "Guy's a walking tank!" exclaims Edward. "Tank?" questioned Jean. "I'll tell you later," replies Edward. "We can't do anything to him if he has that armor plating around him. We're as good as useless." Ed kneels down and slams his fist on the tiles. "Come on, think. Think, dammit." He turns his head and looks back at the colossal titan on the wall. He thought back to what Hang said about the composition of the walls and his fight with Annie, where she demonstrated his hardening crystal abilities. He looked back at Reiner. Could they? Ed stands up. "I have a plan. Jean, I need you to distract Reiner for me." "Got it," replied Jean. "Mikasa, I'm going to need you to fling me towards Reiner's face." "Just give up," Eren thought Reiner as he approached Eren's titan, who was now trying to stand up once more. Reiner causally approached like a predator. "Neither you nor the scouts can beat me." Jean zipped over to one of the houses along Reiner's path. "Hey asshole," he yelled, trying to catch Reiner's attention. "You used to talk a lot of shit about being a soldier, but you're nothing but a piece of shit traitor." Reiner stopped in his tracks and turned his head towards Jean. Jean flinched slightly as the armored titan stared at him, but he quickly recomposed himself. "I can't believe I considered you as a friend, you fucking bastard." "Jean, shut up," thought Reiner as he pulled his arm back to strike at the building Jean was on. Ed fired himself into the air and let go of his handles. Mikasa zoomed towards Edward, grabbed his air and spun him around and threw him towards Reiner. Ed clapped his hands together while he was thrown towards the armor titan. He pulled back his hands and slammed it into the left side of the armored plating around Reiner's face. The armored plating exploded as Ed deconstructed it. Shards of it were thrown into the air. Jean quickly fires himself towards Ed, grabbing him in the air and lands them both safely on the ground. Reiner pulls back slightly and begins to feel the exposed left side of his face, his fingers running over his rough muscular face. What the hell? Eren's eyes widen as he now saw his opening to strike. He pulls back his right arm, balls his hand into a fist and throws a hard right hook at Reiner's exposed face, sending Reiner crashing down into some of the buildings. Reiner rolls onto his back and sits up, looking at Eren's titan, whose bright green eyes glared at him with murderous intent as he cast a shadow over the armored titans. He doesn't notice Ed running along the rooftops next to him. Ed leaps from the edge of the damaged building, clasps his hands together and slams them onto Reiner's right side, deconstructing the armored plating. Damn him, thought Reiner, that bastard. Eren grabs Reiner by his front plating, pulls him upwards and launches a barrage of punches at Reiner's exposed face. His strength and rage behind his punches only grew in its intensity as the memories of Shiganshina start flooding back. He throws Reiner into another line of houses. Eren pins Reiner to the ground and lets out a savage roar which shatters the glass of the nearby buildings. Has he lost control? Asks Hang as she and the other scouts as they watched Eren annihilate Reiner. Reiner's face was engulfed in a thick cloud of steam, but Eren wasn't going to give him the opportunity to grow back his armored plating. He launched a fast assault of punches at Reiner, even tearing some of the armored plating from his skin before rapidly throwing more punches. He'll kill him at this rate, said Jean as he watched Eren's attack on the armored titan. Even though Reiner had ousted himself as the enemy, a small part of him still couldn't bring himself to not be remorseful over the beating Reiner was taking. However, the other scouts didn't seem to share the same sentiment. Yeah, Eren, yelled one of the scouts. "Tear him out into the open." "No mercy," yelled other. "Make that traitor pay," yelled a third. I won't die here," thought Reiner as Eren threw another punch into his right cheek. "I have a job to finish, and I cannot fail." Using all of his strength, Reiner pushes Eren off of him and into a pile of rubble. Eren tries to get up, but Reiner picks him up and throws him onto the main road, putting some distance between the two. As Eren once more tries to get up on his feet again, Reiner charges at him and tackles him into the ground. He then picks up Eren and places him on his shoulder. Eren tries to struggle out of Reiner's grip but fails as he repeatedly slams his fist onto his armor-plated back. "He's trying to take Eren outside of Stohess," yelled Hang. "Soldiers, prevent the armored titan from reaching the gate." Mikasa surges through the air towards the armored titan and strikes his Achilles heel. Jean, Hang and the other scouts all quickly follow suit, but to no avail. They couldn't slow down the armored titan. Reiner then charges forward holding Eren. Ed overtakes them and shoots himself further ahead. He lands onto the main road and transmutes a block in Reiner's path in a desperate attempt to stop him, but Reiner crashes through the wall. Ed quickly jumps off to the side and avoids the massive titan charging forward. Reiner crashes through the gate of Stohess into Walrose's interior with Eren, chunks of debris falling around them as a massive hole through the gate was made. "What the hell was that?" yelled Connie. The sound of the loud crash behind them took their focus from the colossal titan. They rushed over to the side of Walrose's interior to see the armored titan and Eren's titan both lying on the ground surrounded by large chunks of the gate. Jean and Mikasa scale the wall and rush over to the edge where the rest of the 104th looked down watching the battle. Eren's titan was the first to get up onto its feet. Its body slumped and hunched over as it tried to repair the broken bones it had sustained from the attack. Kuta of steam poured from his body. He quickly shuffled away from Reiner, trying to put some distance between them so that he could focus on repairing the damage done to his titan. "Eren!" yells Armin. He jumps down from the wall and lands onto its side, and he was now at eye level with Eren. Eren looked at Armin. "Reiner's trying to kidnap you. Have to get back into Stohess. You're in no shape to keep on fighting." Eren turned his head back to the entrance only to see the armored titan was now back on its feet. However, even his condition looked terrible. His face and parts of his chest had yet to regenerate its armored plating. It looked as though neither titans were in any shape to continue, but neither of the shifters weren't looking to back down. Hang, Ed and Team 1 quickly arrived at the scene. "Eren, I found a way to beat Reiner," said Hang. "I need you to hold him down." She then looked to Ed. "Once that happens, then I need you to destroy the armored plating around his nape, then we go in for the kill." "Understood." "Understood," replied Ed. He turns his head upwards to the colossal titan above them. "Then we get Al back." Eren nodded his head. Hang looked at Eren a little shocked. "Wait, he understood what I said? Holy fucking shit." The armored titan began to circle them. He was now staring them down, with Eren's back up against the wall, and began to advance towards Eren. "Good luck you two," said Hang as she and Armin fell back to higher ground. "Eren, I need you to get him into a leg lock," said Ed. "I'll trip him up and you pin him down." "I've got to keep my wits about me," thought Reiner, eyeing Ed. "If he tries to come at me again, then I'll have to swat him like a bug." Reiner dug his feet into the ground and pushed himself forward, charging towards them with the speed of a rabid bull. Ed clapped his hands together and slapped the wall. A large fist burst straight out of the left side of Thule and curves around. Reiner turns his head to the side slightly, noticing the large fist coming at him. "What the?" The fist strikes the armored titan in the right side of its face, sending him skidding into the ground. Ed transmutes the fist back into the wall while Eren charges at the downed armored titan. Eren grabs his legs and places the armored titan into a spinal lock. He hooked Reiner's legs into his arms. Reiner digs his hands into the ground and tries to crawl away, dragging both him and Eren under the shadow of the colossal titan. Ed prepares to descend onto the armored titan when suddenly it lets out a vicious roar. Ed hesitates. The scouts quickly scan their surroundings. "Can Reiner call titans too?" questioned Jean. "There can't be any more of them," said Armin as he frantically observed the surrounding area. "Soldiers, watch the perimeter," ordered Hang. "Screaming for help won't save you, Reiner," thought Eren as he pulled on the armored titan's legs and dug his knees into the dirt. Suddenly the sound of loud snapping echoed in the air. "What the?" mutters Connie. The scouts close by then quickly noticed the ribs of the colossal titan breaking and its monstrous large body shifting to the side. "Oh fuck. No. 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 Everyone move." Levi yells, Hang, look out. Levi leaps from the wall. Hang looks up to see the shadow of the colossal titan looming over them. She stares at the colossal titan in wide-eyed shock when suddenly she's tackled by Levi, who quickly moves them out of the way of the colossal titan's descent. Eren! Yells Mikasa from the top of the wall. Ed quickly transmutes a part of the wall to shield himself from the blast while the rest of the scouts scatter. Eren looks upwards to see the large skull of the colossal titan heading straight for him. Boom! There was an intense explosion of light as the colossal titan exploded upon impact with the ground. An intense gust of wind blew back the nearby trees, houses, and scouts around the area. Both Hang and Levi were shot upwards into the air. Still holding on to Hang, Levi fires his cable onto the top of the wall and lowers them both down. Ed pressed himself into the corner of the shield he formed from the wall as a fierce gust of steam hits the wall. In the commotion, Reiner pins Eren to the ground with his face in the dirt and bites into Eren's titan's nape, ripping Eren from his titan. As the steam died down, Berthold emerged from the colossal titan carrying both Ymir in one arm and Alphonse in the other. Reiner picks up Berthold and takes Alphonse while Berthold held onto Ymir. As the armored titan runs off, Ed manages to catch sight of Alphonse in his grasp. L! Yells Edward. He frantically presses on the triggers for his gas. It initially shoots himself forward as he tries to give chase to the armored titan. However, the exhaust almost immediately ends its continual flow of gas and only gave out a few weak puff, which sends him tumbling onto the ground. Ed looks up from the dirt to see the armored titan running off into the distance with his brother. He balls his hand up into fist and punches the ground. Damn it, he thinks to himself as he tries to hold back the tears in his eyes. Ymir! Cried Historia as she caught sight of her friend being held by Berthold. Eren! Mikasa screams. She pulls the trigger, but only pathetic wisps of gas escape the exhaust. She quickly turns to her friends. Your gas, give them to me, she demanded, a look of desperation in her eyes. I'm going after them. Mikasa, you can't, pleaded Sasha. You go out after them by yourself, then you're as good as dead, added Levi as he walked up to them. Mikasa collapses onto her knees and lowered his head to the ground as she began to sob into her red scarf. No. Please, don't go, Mikasa whispered into her scarf. Both Mina and Sasha stood on the wall in defeated silence as they watched the people who were once their friends not so long ago run off. Mina sat down on the edge of the wall and placed her mouth, trying to muffle her own cries. Hang and Levi both watch from the top of the wall as the armored titan and Berthold make their escape. Hang lets out an angered groan while Levi stared at them menacingly. We've been beaten, said Hang, a sour tone in her voice. Oh, how could this get any worse? Yells Connie. Suddenly the sound of crumbling close by alerts the scouts on the wall. Is the wall about to collapse? Questioned Mina as she got up to her feet. Well, that'll just be perfect, wouldn't it? Said Jean furiously, angered by the recent turn of events. They all ran to other side of the wall and looked down to see large yet surprisingly thin chunks of wall crash onto the ground. As they peered over, they saw what looked to be a black hole inside the wall. Wait, hold on, said Armin as fell from the wall and fired his cables onto its side near the hole. The others quickly followed his example. What they saw caused them to freeze up on the spot. Is that a? Stuttered Sasha. It's a colossal titan, muttered Armin. Hang and Levi looked down on them as the secret they knew about had now just been revealed to everyone else. Hey! Yelled a voice from below. Connie looked down. He fell from the wall and onto the ground to meet the stranger. It was a priest. The priest grabs Connie by his shoulders and grips him tightly. Hey man, what the hell? Exclaims Connie, startled by the priest's actions. Where are your superiors? Asks the priest. By the terrified look on his face, Connie knew something wasn't right. Suddenly Levi approaches them. What seems to be the matter? Levi asks sarcastically. Oh right, the big-ass colossal titan in the wall, right? He says, pointing to the titan with his thumb. The minister looks at Levi, extremely perplexed by his calmness during this situation. Yeah. Yes. Replies Minster Nick urgently. You have to find the Elric's boys and get them to cover up the hole. We can't let the sunlight reach it. Is that so? Says Levi nonchalantly. He looks behind himself to see a group of scouts from Team 3 and 4 move in next to him. As they form a half circle around the priest, a few of them gave a nod to Levi. There was an unspoken tension in the air which shattered the moment when Levi raised his blade in the direction of the priest. Minister Nick, for the good of humanity we will be held under the jurisdiction of the Scout Regiment and questioned accordingly. Chapter 28, Secrets. Ed placed his hands on the wall, all the while never taking his eyes off the colossal titan which lay dormant inside. On top of the wall, Hang and Levi both watched as Ed covered up the hole. Behind them was Minister Nick, sitting on the ground with his hands bound together by rope. Ed fires his cables onto the ledge of the wall and reels himself upwards to meet Levi and Hang. "It's done," says Ed. He then looked off into the distance of Walrose's interior, where the Reiner and Berthold ran off with Al, Aaron, and Amir. "Guess that confirms that all the walls have titans in them then," remarked Hang. "Unbound me this instant," demanded the minister. "You cannot hold me against my will, you have no right." "We have every right," replied Levi. "Doesn't matter if we get confirmation from Irwin in the next 10 minutes or 10 days, you shouldn't have been so mouthy and now you get the pleasure of our company." Levi strolls up the minister and looks on him. "Though I guess I should thank you, you've saved us the trouble of combing through your congregation." "You knew about the titans?" asks the minister, shocked. "For a few days now," Levi replied. "So preacher man, why are there titans in the walls and why all the hush about it?" Minister Nick growls at Levi. You'll get nothing out of me." Levi turns his head back. "Hang," he calls out. Hang lifts her goggles up to her forehead. She walks up to the minister, grabs him by the collar and drags him over to the edge of the wall. Nick begins to struggle as Hang's intentions became clear to him. Hang lifts Nick onto his feet and dangles him over the edge while keeping his feet onto the wall just barely. Levi walks up next to them and sits over the edge of the wall watching them with a stone-faced expression. "Squad leader!" exclaims Moblet. "Whoa, Hang!" yells Ed, shocked by Hang threatening the man's life. He was about to step in when Levi turned to Ed and raised his hand up slightly to stop him. "Do you know why we do it?" questioned Hang. From the tone of her voice and the look on her face it was clear was irate. "Why we risk our lives to go outside the walls? Why the regiment willingly spills so much blood? Because one day, there will come a time when we're free of the titans, and if that meant giving our lives then we'd gladly do so." The scouts and Edward all watched Hang, taking in her heartfelt words about the dedication of the scouts. "Even if all we achieve is a step forward then we'll continue to give our lives for humanity's future." Hang grip on the minister. "Titans and you and God know how many others have been holding this information from us. For years you could afford to be silent, but not anymore. You're going to talk or you're going to fall." You wouldn't dare," responded Minister Nick, frightened. "People fall off the wall all the time," replied Levi, "and I'm sure everyone here can attest to your sudden accidental demise." If that's how it is," stuttered the minister, "then so be it. Release me then," he proclaimed. "I will not tell you a single thing, and much like you I will gladly give my life." Hang turned her head to Levi, who responded with a shrug. Hang's grip on the minister instantly loosens and he fell back off the edge of the wall. "Squad leader!" shouts Moblet, looking distressed. "Levi?" asks Hang calmly. "Give it a second," replies Levi. After 2 seconds Levi pushes himself off the wall, pulling the triggers for his gas. He soars downwards and tackles the minister in the air and safely lowers both of them onto the ground. Nick collapses onto the floor shaking. Hang, Ed and the rest of the scouts lower themselves into the ground as well. "Get up, preacher," said Levi. "I want to show you something." "Commander, wake up," said Anka before slapping him on the head. "If you're going to go to sleep then head back inside, the night air will kill you." "Ugh, don't nag me," replied Pixis, awakening from his drunk slumber. "What's the situation?" Recon teams were sent to swept along the walls between districts Trost and Klorba, Anka informed, though they have yet to report any more Titan sightings. It's been assumed that the main bulk, if not the entirety, of the Titan force was at the castle battle with the 104th Scout Regiment the night before and were all wiped out. Captain Ian Dietrich and team leader Rico Bertsinska have arrived back with their company from the east, and Captain Woolman and team leader Mitabi Jarnach are now moving the rest of the elite division westwards to sweep the area. "That's good to hear," replied Pixis. "Barring a surprise Titan horde the interior of Walrose should be clear. I can drink to that," said Pixis, raising a green bottle in the air in celebration. Anka quickly snatches the bottle from Pixis. "You shouldn't be drinking this much, Commander, you aren't a young man," said Anka. the sound of cables zipping catches their attention. They turn their heads to see Commander Irwin landing onto the ledge of the wall. "Commander Pixis," calls Irwin. "Ah." Irwin greets Pixis as he shook his hand. "Congratulations on the new powers from the central government. I know from experience that trying to get those fat bureaucrats to compromise on their authority is like pulling out nails." "The perks of capturing an infiltrator," replies Irwin, though this latest Titan incursion had stalled our plans to capture the others. "I'm sorry to hear that, though it does look like this latest attack has caused our friends in the interior to rethink their policy of isolation," says Pixis. "Indeed, looks like even the military police brigade are making an appearance here," replies Irwin as they look down off the wall observing the gathering of soldiers near the gate. "So you're saying you hadn't encountered any Titans on your way to Trost?" asked Rico. "Didn't see any Titans on the way here," said one of the scouts too. "Weird, when I got word of that huge Titan battle in the west I thought all hell has broken loose, instead it's just quiet." 104th were the ones who took the brunt of it?" asked Ian. "Yeah, Southern Division specifically," replied another scout. "Damn, same ones who were at Trost," replied Ian in a grim tone. "Poor kids can't catch a break." "I thought we came down here for an emergency," laughed one of the MPs to their own group. "A Titan attack without a single Titan. We just come here to sit on our asses." "Questioned a second, I'm itching to kill some Titans." "Ha!" replied a third enthusiastically. "I want a real challenge, I want to take on that colossal Titan." Suddenly the sound of frantic running had caught their attention. "Somebody get the commanders!" yelled the messenger. He was waving a green cloak with the symbol of the garrison rose on it. He then collapsed onto his knees in exhaustion. After about 30 seconds everyone huddled around the messenger. Commander Irwin and Pixis stood before him. "Are you part of the recon teams?" asked Pixis. "No, sir," replied the messenger, still trying to catch his breath. "I'm from the Stohes garrison. It's an emergency. The colossal and armored Titans have attacked the city." There was a collective gasp among the crowd. The scouts under the command of squad leader Hang Zoe and Captain Levi fought them while the garrison evacuated the city. "Was there anything else?" asked Irwin. "No sir, I was ordered to spread the word from Hermina then Trost just when the battle had started. I managed to notify squad leader Nanaba before I headed here." "Good work soldier," replied Pixis placing his hand on the messenger's shoulder. "Head to the barracks and get some rest. Seems like the obvious course of action now is to move our forces to Stohes. Let's hope we get there before the battle is over," said Irwin. "All soldiers get on a horse, we leaving as soon as possible." Back inside Stohes the 104th are huddled at the corner of an empty mess hall. Tears were still being shed over the betrayal of their friends, the defeat they suffered at their hands and the kidnapping of Aaron, Alphonse, and Amir. They were still dressed in their combat uniform as they sat on a bench table. This is just so crazy," said Connie looking at the floor. "I just keep going back over my memories of them trying to find some kind of clue but..." He quickly places his hand over his eyes trying to stop the tears as the fond memories of Reiner and Berthold come back to him making their treachery that more depressing. Sasha sat with her head resting on her folded arms. I just can't believe it." Jean stood leaning against the wall with his arms folded while looking at the ground. He was still seething with anger over the betrayal, though a part of him still couldn't bring himself to totally hate them, not matter how much he wanted to. Armin sat on the bench with one arm around Mikasa as she held the red scarf close to her, tears staining its color. "Why Armin?" she asked, choking on her own words. "Why does he get so far away from us?" Armin sighed. "He just always does, whether if he chose to or not." "They took her," whispered Historia, fighting back tears. "I just want her back." Mina was staring at the ground, a sad expression on her face. She turned her head to see the distraught faces of her friends and the only person not there with them was Ed. He must be devastated over Al, she thought, remembering the moment Ed called out for Alphonse when Berthold ate them. She looked back on the day they met in Trost, when he saved her life, when he almost started a fight with the garrison over her. She thought back to when Al promised her dad they'd look out for her in the battle at the castle when he saved her life again. "I thought I could protect humanity and the people closest to me, but I can't do either." "Hey," called out someone from the doorway. It was Edward. "Armin, Hang wants to see you in her office." Armin stood up and walked over to the exit and left the mess hall. "I'm sorry about Alphonse," said Armin. "Don't be," "We're getting him, Aaron and Amir back," said Ed defiantly. Armin looked at Ed a bit perplexed by grit his voice had. He had thought Ed would have been distraught. He walked off down the hallway to hang, wondering if Ed has something planned. "Mikasa," Ed called out, "Captain Levi wanted to see you for a second." Mikasa got up and walked over to Ed, who then began to walk off. "Follow me." She followed him down the hallway, and then turning the corner Ed stopped them. "What is this, Ed?" questioned Mikasa. "Levi not the one who want to see you." "I am," replied Edward. "I'm going to go after Reiner and Berthold. I'm going to get them back," he said, his voice possessing a kind of fortitude. "But I'll need another person with me if I've got a hope of taking them on. If Reiner's still in his Titan form and having too many people would raise suspicions, so I'm asking you in." Mikasa looked at Ed wide-eyed for a second before narrowing them and gritting her teeth. "Count me in," she replied with a similar resolve. Ed allowed himself a small smile. "All right, seeing as the only people there near the gate are garrison troops, we'll need to swap out our scout uniform for the garrison to avoid suspicion," suggested Ed. "Get the rest of your gear and I'll get a hold of some of their jackets. We'll meet back at the stables." Mikasa nodded, and the two quickly went off in opposite directions. Unknown to them, two people were standing at one of the other hallways and listening in on their conversation. Ed approached the storage room. He turned the door handle locked. He muttered. He pressed his hands together and places them on the wall, creating an entrance for him to pass through. He quickly searched through the different crates, cannonballs, gas canisters, blades. Aha! He took out a light brown waistcoat with the garrison rose on it. Gotcha! He took off his scout coat. As he placed it on the ground, he couldn't help but stare at the symbol. "Why we risk our lives to go outside the walls? Why the regiment willingly spills so much blood? Because one day, there will come a time when we're free of the Titans, and if that meant giving our lives, then we'd gladly do so." Ed sighed. "You're all in this for the greater good, and me? I'm only in this because it helps in getting something I want." He folded away the scout coat, put on the garrison one and took a spare one for Mikasa. He quickly rushed outside to the military HQ stables. Levi kicks Nick further down the corridor to the underground. "Keep moving." The two of them walk further down until they reach an opening into a massive cavern which housed an underground city. Hundreds of torches illuminated the ground to show thousands of people, huddled together in the dirt looking completely miserable. MPs walked around handing out pieces of bread to people and administering beatings to those who tried to take more. They spotted a young man being beaten by two MPs with their rifles, all while a young boy tried to stop them. "Stop please!" cried the man. "I just needed for my brother." "You'll get what you're given," replied one of the MPs, who then kicked him in the ribs. "This is the punishment for stealing." "Leave him alone!" cried the little boy. "Get out of here, kid," ordered the other as he pushed him away, the child falling into the muck. The minister watched with a shocked expression on his face. He took a step forward towards them in the hope of intervening, but was pulled back by Levi. "Take it in, preacher," said Levi. "This is what happens when the Titans get inside the wall. Thousands of people forced to pack up their lives and move into this shithole." Nick looked down onto the ground, guilt building up inside him. "Keep looking, those are the faces of the people who might have lost everything, but if the church had its way, then staying here would be the least of their problems. They'd devoured and forced into the unimaginable hell of the Titan's stomach. I've heard survivors' accounts of what it's like to be eaten, and it's enough to give you nightmares, and all of humanity digested as one." Levi let his words stew on the minister for a while before continuing. "But it doesn't have to be this way. If we got the information we needed to beat them, then humanity might still have a chance, and scenes like this," he said, pointing to the injured young man on the floor being hugged by his crying brother, "or worse, wouldn't have to happen." "Ready to go?" asked Mikasa as she untied the reins of her horse from one of the posts. "Hold on," said Ed, clapped his hands and placed them on a bowl holding some kind of black liquid. He dipped his ponytail in it. Mikasa watched as the black liquid traveled his long strains and turned his hair from its golden blonde to a coal black. "Figured someone like me would stick out like a sore thumb." He tossed the bowl aside and walked their horses out of the stable and onto the street. "Here's the cover. We're messengers being sent to the other districts. If anyone stops us, let me do all the talking." Mikasa nodded her head. All around there were garrison soldiers along with different workers clearing up the rubble from the battle. Entire homes were destroyed and streets practically demolished. It's a good thing everyone was evacuated beforehand. Couldn't imagine how many people could have been caught in the crossfire. They were now at the entrance into Walrose's interior. Most of the rubble had been cleared and the workers had moved on to other streets. It looked like they were in the clear themselves when suddenly someone stopped them. "Hey, stop right there!" yelled a person off to their side. They both looked over to see a fairly tall guy with short black hair done in a bowl cut. There was an almost serious look about the guy and he had the unicorn symbol of the military police on his uniform. "We've got important business to attend to," said Ed. "We got asked to send a message to the other districts in Walrose." "Liar," said the guy. Suddenly a bunch of other MPs rushed over and surrounds the two. They all had muskets pointed on them. "We know you're with the scouts and that you're defying the orders of your superiors." Mikasa glared at him. She took out one of her handles and attached her blade to it. The MPs flinched at the sight. Ed examined them. "These guys look young. They must be new cadets." "Look, this doesn't concern you," said Ed, trying to reason with them. "So why don't you just leave and we can forget this whole thing?" "I'm with him, Marlowe," said one of the other MPs. She was slightly shorter than Ed and Mikasa, large amber eyes and wavy light brown hair. "This really isn't our problem." "Damn it, Hitch," replied Marlowe. "It's about the principle. We can't let the command structure fall apart in any of the military branches or else humanity falls with it." "Get out of our way," growled Mikasa, taking out her blade. "Stand down, all of you," said a person from behind. They all turned back to see Captain Levi with Minister Nick. He walked up to Ed and Mikasa. "Hey Ed, when and why did your hair change color?" Ed sighed. "I thought it would better disguise me," he admitted. "You do realize you're traveling with the only Asian person left in the entire human race, right?" questioned Levi, looking unimpressed. "You stick out regardless." "Captain Levi," said Marlowe, saluting him. The rest of the MPs followed suit. "At ease. Tell me, soldier, what's your name?" asked Levi. "Private Marlowe Freudenberg, sir," he replied. "Thank you, showed some real initiative doing this," complimented Levi. "Thank you, sir," said Marlowe, his face beaming. "Kiss ass much, Marlowe?" muttered Hitch, teasing him. "You two follow me," Levi said to Edward and Mikasa. They both walked over to Captain Levi, leaving their horses to the MPs. "So, you're not going to punish us?" asked Ed. "Oh no, I'm still going to beat your asses for stolen equipment and possible desertion at some point," replied Levi. "Right now we've got bigger things to worry about." "Come in," said Hang, standing behind a desk. To left end was Nanaba and to the right was Armin. The three of them were looking over a map of the area around Walrose, trying to figure out where Reiner and Berthold would hid. The members of the 104th came into the office. They all still looked miserable but formed up into a line before them. Nanaba saluted them. "Hello again, never thought we'd meet so soon again and like this." "How are the other guys?" asked Mina. "They're getting treatment," replied Nanaba. She then looked away from their gaze, though some of them passed away on the way to her. Mina. They all looked to the ground solemnly. "There's some chairs around, so take a seat if you want," said Hang. "I know you must have plenty of questions to ask." "Why aren't you going after them?" questioned Historia, walking up to her. "Why aren't we going after them?" "Believe me, we are," replied Hang. "I've already sent out what's left of our squad to scout out their position. The others are too injured to move forward, and the reason I didn't want you to go out after them is because you're clearly in no emotional state to take them on again. I wanted to give you time to recover first. Right now we're trying to figure out what their most likely possible location should be, with Reiner mostly likely being too worn out to make it into Wal Maria's interior. Also, a messenger came our way and alerted me of the battle," added Nanaba. "What was left of the squad and I came here as soon as possible. It's likely that the messenger is also heading to alert Commander Irwin, who will no doubt send reinforcements our way." "Did you know," asked Jean, "that they were the shifters?" "Yes, Jean." This time it was Armin who answered. "The scout leaders, Ed, and Al, Mikasa and I, we knew." "You knew, Armin?" asked Connie, surprised. "You kept this from us?" asked Sasha. "We just had to keep as tight of a circle as possible and we didn't want it slipping out," replied Armin. "The whole training routine was meant to be a setup to capture them." "Underground evacuation in Stohes," said Jean, piecing it together. "How'd you find out?" asked Connie. "During the 57th Recon mission we were able to capture the female Titan," said Hang, to a choir of gasps and shocked faces. What little information about her connected them to her. "Wait, who's the female Titan?" asked Mina. Hang looked to Armin. "Should I she asked, feeling that she should be the one to break them the bad news on top of everything else. Armin sighed, no, I should be the one to do it. They all waited in anticipation of the answer. Annie. Annie's the female titan. None of them made a sound, but the looks on their faces showed they were aghast at the revelation. Annie too, muttered Sasha. This all just too heavy, said Connie. No, said Mina. I don't believe it. Annie wouldn't betray us, she's our friend. She refused to believe that the person she'd known for 3 years and her best friend was the enemy. I'm sorry Mina, really I am, but I saw her in the cell and she never denied it, replied Armin. Also during the expedition Jean, Reiner, and I had an encounter with her. I saw her respond to Aaron's nickname, something only people in our class would know. Armin paused for a second to allow everyone time to dwell on the information, but on the day we were inspected by the military police I saw her turning in Marco's ODM gear as her own to pass. It's all too likely that she's the one who killed the Titan test subjects. Jean's eyes widened at Armin's last statement. She had Marco's gear, she was with him when he died, he didn't have it on him when he died, she took it from him and left him for dead. Jean felt an almost overwhelming feeling of grief and anger pour over him on top of almost everything he felt about Reiner and Berthold. No. It just can't be, continued Mina. It felt as if the ground beneath her was collapsing. She couldn't face the truth and desperately tried to convince her otherwise, however Jean cut her off. If you even think about continuing to defend her, threatened Jean, I swear I'll dash. The sound of the door opening caught their attention. They all turned to see Captain Levi along with Ed, Mikasa, and Minister Nick. Seems like you guys were in the midst of a heated discussion. If you were any louder you'd be heard from Utopia District, commented Levi. Also yes, Leonhardt is the female Titan. I pulled her out of that Titan body myself. These two were there, he said, pointing at Ed and Mikasa. Wait, who's the other guy? Asked Connie, confused by the appearance of this strange guy with black hair and golden eyes wearing the garrison jacket. It's me, Connie, replied Ed. Whoa, Ed, replied Connie a bit shocked. I didn't recognize you. What's with the get-up? I'll explain later, replied Ed, but yeah. Annie Leonhardt is the female Titan. Look, even Aaron had a hard time believing it when we told him, but I think on some level he did know. Back when Aaron and I were in the forest fighting her, she did this fighting stance and suddenly Aaron's Titan just froze up. It might be her signature move or something, and it looked sort of like this. Ed then bent his knees, left leg forward and right leg back with his fist near his face. They all stared at Ed stunned. He wasn't with them during the cadet corps and he'd only met Annie back in Trost, yet he'd mimicked Annie's fighting stance almost perfectly. He must have recognized it and froze up. Ed finished, moving out of Annie's fight stance. Mina collapsed onto the ground. The truth she tried to look away from came down on her. Sasha and Historia rushed over to pick her up. Hey, are you okay? Asked Sasha, concerned as they got her back up to her feet. She said, I just need a moment. Mina leaned back against the wall. 100 thoughts ran through her head as an internal war was being fought over whether she should hate Annie or still try hold on to the person she thought she knew. Levi places his hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry you guys had to find out this way. Go sit down for a bit, he suggests. Levi then turns his attention to the minister. Nick has something he wants to share with us. So have you had a change in heart? Questioned Hang, impatiently. Through the many years we had resided in these walls we had created a firm covenant. I cannot tell you the secret or the walls, and neither will my brothers, but we have entrusted that secret to a single family, and I can tell you who. You'd try to get rid of the responsibility from yourself and pass it on to other? Questioned Hang. Yes, there is a child who was caught up in a conflict involving the bloodline 3 years ago. She may know the answers. There was a tense silence. She goes under a false name, Crystal Lentz. Without a second passing, everyone's turns their attention to Historia. She looked at the minister, completely dumbfounded by what he was saying. Minister Nick's eyes widen. He didn't notice Historia when he entered the room. Recruit, said Levi, is there anything you'd like to tell us? I don't know what you mean, stuttered Historia. Well then it looks like one of you isn't being honest with us, Levi replied before turning back to the minister. Nick panicked. But you must know, said Nick, your father must have told you. Okay, first start by telling us everything you know, Historia, asked Nanaba. My dad is Rod Rice. He was the lord of the land I lived in and I'd only met him once 5 years ago, Historia confessed. For some reason they wanted me dead but he convinced them to spare me if I went away, but that's it I swear. They turned back to the minister who looked completely dumbfounded. Jean grabs Nick by his collar and quickly slams him up against the wall despite the height difference between the two. Listen you son of a bitch, threatened Jean, still angry about the recent revelation of Annie being involved in Marco's death. I've had a rough 2 nights so don't fuck with me. Levi hand grips Jean's shoulder. That's enough he orders, you won't get through to him like that, believe me we've tried. Jean lets go Nick who then slumps to the ground. Historia walks up to Nick and kneels down in front of him. Please, I don't know anything, said Historia. Nick shifts his head upwards. The two of them are now looking at each other face to face. All my life I've been treated like an outsider, like someone who no one, not even my own mother, wanted. Tears began to well up in her eyes, and now I'm losing the people I care about and I don't know why. Why me? Nick's eyes shifted to the floor. He was unable to look her in the eyes knowing the pain they've caused her. Child, I am so sorry. He whispered. He then brought Historia closer, as if to whisper something in her ear. The 104th flinched when he touched her but held back. I've lived a wretched life and played my part in this terrible grand scheme of things, but for once, I'm going to do something right. The family you belong to is a special one. They're the true royal bloodline. Chapter 29, Secrets 2. Aaron slowly opened his eyes. A cloud of smoke engulfed his body. His vision was blurry at first but very quickly it began to clear up. He found him up against a wall inside the living room of a house. He turned his head to the right to see Amir, her hands tied behind her back and her ankles tied together. He turned his head to the left to see Alphonse he was still wearing his brown jacket although they had taken his green cloak, his legs tied together and his hands tied behind his back with 2 small straw sacks covering his hands. Aaron came a voice in front of him. Aaron looked upwards to see Reiner looming over him with Berthold behind him. So you're awake. Instantly Aaron realized they had taken his and Alphonse's ODM gear. Aaron tried to move only to find his bloody feeling constricted. He looked down to see his cloak wrapping his body and his feet bound together with rope. He began to struggle and unwrap the cloak only to revel his arms had been reduced to stumps with everything above his elbow having to be regrown. Ah! He yelled, my arms, what the? Damn, sucks to be you Aaron. Commented Amir. What the hell happened to my arms? Growled Aaron. My fault replied Reiner, I was in a hurry, didn't make a clean bite in the chaos. So, we lost then. Aaron stated in a deadpan voice. He glared at both Reiner and Berthold. He quickly raised his stump to his mouth and bit down. Aaron don't! Yelled Alphonse in a panicked tone. Hey do it if you want to, said Amir. We're still in Walrose so you're basically home free, but keep in mind if you transform you'll send the whole house crashing down on the family upstairs. Aaron looked at Reiner and Berthold. There was an uneasy look about Berthold while Reiner looked almost calm. They're a family of 5 up there and unless you want their blood on your hands, you'll stay put, said Reiner, his arms folded, and Alphonse can't help you either. His ability depends on his hands coming into contact with each other and we've made sure to counter that. Alphonse glared at the two and tried to put on a frustrated face. It was the only thing he could do to hold in his smirk at their ignorance of how his alchemic ability worked. Good thing brother stopped wearing gloves, he thought. Al knew that at some point he'd have to act and apprehend them, but he had to pick his moment carefully, and for now he was going to sit and observe them, hopefully get some answer from them about the Titans. Aaron looked back at the straw bags over Al's hands. And besides, your Titan power is not without restrictions. Your body is too busy repairing itself at the moment and you can't transform until it's finished. Why the hell should I believe you? You fucking traitor, questioned Aaron in a harsh tone. Everyone in Walrose has been evacuated by now. Reiner looked to Berthold and nodded at him. Berthold had a sad look on his face. He got up and walked up the stairs to the 2nd floor. They listened carefully to his heavy footsteps. There was a few seconds of silence followed by the sound of a blade being drawn from the scarab. Suddenly a loud bang rang through the house as he kicked down one of the doors. It was immediately followed by the ear-piercing shrieks of young children and cries of one of the parents. Hey, you leave them alone! Yelled Aaron. There was the sound of the door closing, muffling the cries, and footsteps going back to the stairs. As Berthold walked down the stairs, his blades placed back in his scarab, he caught a glimpse at the angered expressions of Aaron and Alphonse. That wasn't necessary, said Alphonse in an angered tone. Just making Aaron clear of the situation at hand. Stated Reiner, scream and shout as much as you want, but we're in rural Walrose. The nearest village is probably then a few miles away, and whatever houses are around are abandoned, evacuated most likely. These guys mustn't have got the message. Hey Reiner, you said we'd talk when Aaron woke up, so tell us, what exactly the plan here? There was a long pause after Amir's question. You three are coming with us back to our hometown. Replied Reiner, I'd ask you to not to be a pain in the ass, but let's face it, you're coming up with 100 ways of escaping right now. Why exactly are you kidnapping us? Asked Alphonse. It should be obvious, Alphonse. Replied Reiner, Aaron and Amir are both Titan shifters and your alchemy will be valuable to us back home. Not exactly an answer to my question, replied Alphonse. Well, it's all you're getting, replied Reiner. Anyways, the sun's coming up and I don't want to be out in the open in broad daylight when the scouts are likely hunting for us, and I'd like to cover as much ground as possible when we're in Wall Maria, so we're leaving at nightfall. That's right, thought Aaron. Hopefully they survived that blast. We just got to hope now they find us while we're still in Walrose, otherwise they're done for if those two drag us into Maria. Scouts aren't exactly a threat to your Titan, remarked Amir. Why couldn't you have just headed back to your hometown? What did you have to take a break or something? You figure it out, replied Reiner dismissively. Okay then, what happens when you're in Wall Maria then? Questioned Amir. The Titans in the castle didn't care that it was night. Those were different Titans, the ones in Maria won't try to go after us at night. Responded Reiner, but I don't have to tell you about that, Amir. Amir's got something to hide, thought Alphonse. Nanaba was right, why didn't she come out into the open about it? She said she'd tell us everything after the battle. If I can't get either Reiner or Berthold to say anything, then I at least have to make sure she doesn't fall into their hands. 100 thoughts ran through Aaron's mind. How much does Amir know? Is she on our side? What's her endgame here? He looked back at Reiner and Berthold. My best option now is to try and gather as much information from them as possible. He then looked back at Alphonse. If we could get those binds off, then he could destroy Reiner's armor like Ed. We'll have a better chance at beating them if the scouts don't find us. He gritted his teeth and continued to give angry glares at them. Until then, I've to keep my emotions in check. Sunlight began to seep through the wooden blinds on the windows. Reiner sat on a wooden chair watching the three who were sat up against the wall, and Berthold leaned up against the front of the house, peering through the wooden blinds every so often, his face masked by the bright light outside. Hey Reiner, called Amir, does this place have any water? Come on, I'm drying up here. We shouldn't take anything from these people, said Alphonse, with a serious look on his face. We've already caused them enough grief. Hey, you can be as virtuous as you want, but some of us would rather not be thirsty, replied Amir, in a matter-of-fact tone. No, he's right, replied Reiner. These last couple hours have been rough, but we shouldn't forget our duty to the people. Almost immediately everyone turned their attention to Reiner. Berthold had an anxious look on his face. Both Alphonse and Aaron looked at him completely puzzled, and Amir looked at him slightly confused. But I guess even that's an understatement. It's been what, 2 days since the breach? We've only been able to eat some bits here and there and maybe catch a few hours sleep if we were lucky. Could you imagine what the situation could have been had the walls been actually breached? Still, this whole thing was hell to go through, what with Titan battle at the castle. I think after that the very least we deserve is a promotion, he said. Reiner, almost laughing. What the hell? Muttered Berthold. Aaron began looking at the ground, still wide-eyed. He could feel the pent-up rage inside him start to boil. I mean, look, I get it, continued Reiner. We're soldiers, it's what we signed up for. Hell, even Erwin was upfront about it at graduation, but I'm just saying it'd be nice to get some kind of acknowledgement for the service. Did you hit your head or something? Questioned Amir sarcastically with a puzzled smile on her face, though in her mind she was piecing it together. What? I'm not saying we barge into Erwin or Darius' office and demand to be made captains or squad leaders. Hell, I'd even settle for a medal, replied Reiner with an innocent boyish smile on his face. And by the way, Alphonse, I got to say I'm impressed. With skill like yours, I'd never would have guessed you'd learn how to use ODM gear in the matter of a few months. You and Ed have really left an impression on us since Trost, though you more so on a certain person. He joked. Aaron could hardly contain his anger. This traitorous bastard thinks he can laugh and joke like nothing's happened. Speaking of which, did you see the way Krista looked at me when I gave her back her gear? Asked Reiner. She's probably gotta think for M dash. Hey! Yelled Aaron, enraged, stopping Reiner. You're fucking with us, aren't you? Reiner looks at Aaron completely confused. Whoa, Aaron, what's wrong? Asks Reiner, surprised by his sudden enraged outburst. Did I say something that upset you? If you keep talking, I swear I'll fucking kill you. Threatened Aaron, yelling at the top of his lungs. Hold up there, Aaron, injected Amir. Looks like someone might have a few nails loose. She then turned her attention to Berthold, who had been sitting quietly with a miserable look on his face. Correct me if I'm wrong, Berthold, but by the looks of it you seem to know something we don't. Reiner turned to Berthold. There was a look of childlike innocence on his face. Reiner, snap out of it, said Berthold in hushed tone, though it was quite clear Berthold was frustrated. We're not soldiers, we're warriors. Reiner turned his head off to the side. His eyes widened and his breathing began slightly erratic. He stood up from his seat and looked at the three tied sitting up against the wall before he quickly composed himself. He had a disappointed look on his face. Yeah, of course, was all he said before sitting back into the chair with his hands covering his face. The three stared at him. What the hell? Said Aaron, his anger shimmering down. I think I know what's going on here, said Amir, catching Aaron and Alphonse's attention. At first I thought it was strange. When you compare the guy who broke the wall to the guy who puts his comrades first, the very people whose lives he's responsible for putting on the line, they're almost polar opposites. Everything you did seemed to contradiction. Alphonse turned back to Reiner to see him still trying to pull himself together. You thought of yourself as the warrior who had to push mankind off the edge, but at the same time you got lost in the act of being a soldier. Why? Did you get too into your role, or was the weight of everything you've done just too much to handle that you had to slip into your very own fantasy? And I'm guessing by the look on Berthold's face this isn't the first time, is it? Berthold didn't react to Amir's comment. Instead he sat there trying not to make eye contact with anyone in the room. Now that's irony, to think someone as straightforward as you. Wow dash. Shut up! Yelled Reiner, glaring at Amir. Not another word. Amir flinched slightly before quickly composing herself. All right then. This hurts you. It's clear you can't live with yourselves knowing what you've done, said Alphonse, but why do you still do it? What could be worth all this? What exactly will you achieve pushing humanity off the edge? Neither Reiner nor Berthold answered his question. They both looked at him for a few seconds and turned away. If you're not going to answer me, then it's obvious that you can't justify what you've done. Your reasons for killing so many people might as well be completely arbitrary or selfish, but it doesn't matter because you won't win. We'll put an end to this. Amir rolled her eyes at Alphonse's declaration. Reiner stood up from his chair and approached Alphonse. He loomed over him with his arms folded and a serious expression on his face. Selfish? You couldn't even begin to understand the sacrifice we've made, the sacrifices we will make and the ones we're prepared to make, stated Reiner. Unlike you, I'm willing to spill blood and if need be die for something I believe is the greater good. What are you giving up? Your time? Perhaps you've forgotten that the only reason, you and your brother are in the Scouts, the only reason you're even here in the first place is because it helps you get something you want. You're not in this to save humanity. Alphonse glared at Reiner. A part of him wanted to transmute something to cut off his bindings and tackle Reiner, but as always Alphonse kept his temper in check. Amir rose her eyebrow at Reiner. I think you might be projecting a bit, Reiner. She commented. Shut it, Amir, responded Reiner with a look of disgust. Go to hell, growled Aaron. Even now you spew out that self-righteous bullshit even after everything you've done. Why the hell did you even listen to me on that day? I'm talking to you, Berthold, you fucking bootlicker. I told you everything. I told you about the day my mother got eaten by a titan because a shard of the gate you kicked down landed right on my house and stopped her from running away. Berthold turned to look at Aaron, a blank expression on his face. How about you tell me, what were you thinking that day I told you? Berthold turned away from Aaron. If I'm honest, said Berthold hesitantly, I just felt sorry for you. There was a jarring silence in the room as Aaron stared wide-eyed at them. You just felt sorry for me? Replied Aaron, in a loud whisper. You two, you're nothing but a bunch of murders, mass murders who ended the lives of innocent people. Oh, would you shut up? Yelled Reiner, still standing over them. I don't need you stating the fucking obvious. Then don't you fucking dare act like what you did hurt you more than the people's lives that you've ruined. You're done nothing but turn this world into a living hell. Are you proud of yourselves, you fucking monsters. You're not a human, you're worse than scum. Yelled Aaron. Before Reiner could respond, the muffled sound of a child from upstairs could be heard cut him off. He backed down and moved a few steps from them. He calmly folded his arms while continuing to look at them with a stern expression. If that's how you feel, then fine, said Reiner, but it doesn't matter anyways. There's nothing that can be done to change the situation for this world. No, responded Aaron, in a venomous tone. There's one thing I can do, and that's making sure that the two of you die in the most painful way possible. Reiner continued to stare at Aaron with a stern expression, like an adult looking down on a child that threatened them. Alphonse looked at Aaron, troubled by his declaration to brutally end their lives, and Emir looked at Aaron, completely unimpressed by his threat. Are you two even listening to yourselves? Said Emir. All that childish bullshit about vows of stopping them and killing them, you can't expecting me to go along with you two knuckleheads. What's that supposed to mean? Questioned Aaron. I'm saying I'm not going to jump on the same boat with someone who's way in over his head and the other being concerned with petty bullshit. She replied, turning to Reiner. Hey Reiner, what's with the giant ape? Reiner's eyes widened slightly. Ape? He asked. Don't know what you mean. Oh, I thought he must have been with you guys, said Emir. Giant ape? Asked Aaron. What's an ape? That beast-looking titan, said Alphonse. He had the same ability as Annie. He's the one that launched the attack on the castle using his scream. What? Exclaimed Aaron. He looked over to Reiner and Berthold. If I had to bet, I'd say he's the one behind the latest titan attack in Walrose, added Emir, possibly trying to test our strength. Wait, he the one who turned Connie's village into titans? Exclaimed Aaron. Emir, Reiner, and Berthold all focused their attention on him, perplexed that he knew about that. So you know about that? Asked Emir. She turned away from Aaron. Well, got to hand it to Armin. The guy may be as weak as a twig, but he's sharp, though. But it doesn't take a genius to realize these guys are trying to link up with the Beast Titan, their way back home. You knew all this time? Questioned Aaron. What else have you been keeping from us? It's not exactly easy to explain, replied Emir. The whole thing is complicated. Simplify it then, demanded Aaron. Emir sighed and shot Aaron an annoyed look. If you two think that stopping these guys will bring an end to all this, then you're in for a rude awakening, replied Emir, annoyed by Aaron. You're right, Emir, said Alphonse calmly, catching her off guard. Maybe I'm in over my head, maybe I'm setting myself up for something impossible, but I've been through that already. Back on my world, Ed and I had to face people who stood in our way and monsters, one of whom wanted to be God, hell-bent on killing innocent people. It wasn't easy fighting them, and we suffered our share of defeats, but in the end we won. Emir's eyes softened slightly as she listened to Alphonse's speech. But before we beat them, we had to learn about them. If you say the situation is complex, then I believe you, but if you can give us anything to work with, then we can work this out. Emir sighed. Look, Alphonse, I believe you when you say that you and Ed had beaten all those things, but you don't know about the enemy we face here. A powerful force they do not yet fully understand. Who is the enemy? Asked Alphonse, thinking back to the truth's words. If I had to say, then it'd be Dash. Reiner quickly interrupts Emir. Do you think these people have a future? He asks. You're someone who sees the bigger picture of things, and the smart thing to do would be to join us. You want me to trust you? She laughed. You really must have lost your mind, and what makes you think you can trust me? I can trust you, replied Reiner, confidence in his voice. Our goals aren't that different. Your goal is to protect Historia, isn't it? Emir's eyes widen at the mere mention of her name. Is it so hard to believe that we want the same thing, to protect her, or would you rather put her life in the hands of Aaron and a bunch of outsiders? Emir's eyes narrowed slightly and contemplated her next move, looking back at Aaron and then Alphonse. You might have been thinking of a way to free the move of them and use them to escape, because you know if you come with us you'd have no chance of survival. I can't guarantee your safety, but Historia, we can realistically work towards that for her. Emir lowered her head to the floor. She contemplated Reiner's offer. Hey, answer the question, demanded Aaron. Who's the real enemy? Who do you think the real enemy is? The real enemy isn't the titans outside these walls, is it? Alphonse thought back to the conversation they had with Erwin a while ago. At the time they had thought there were only titans and the shifters who must have been leading them, but maybe there was more to it. Have I been thinking about this too narrowly, thought Alphonse. He looked back to Reiner and Berthold. Could there be another civilization outside? Who knows? Replied Amir. It's the civilization you work for, said Alphonse, catching everyone off guard. That's right, isn't it? And how exactly did you come to that conclusion? Questioned Reiner. Warrior, that's a rank, meaning you two are part of some kind of organized force. Replied Alphonse. Is there some kind of place like the walls that's filled with titan shifters, or is humanity not really on the brink of extinction? Emir, Aaron, and Berthold's eyes widen at the question. For Aaron it was a bold challenge in the face of everything he'd known for his entire life, but for the others it was someone almost grasping at the truth. Emir stared at Alphonse, surprised. Holy shit, did he just figure it out? Berthold tried his best to remain calm as to not give anything away, but inside he was panicking. Reiner remained calm and tried to figure out a way to throw Alphonse off. Seems like a huge jump to make, doesn't it? Then who do you work for? Questioned Alphonse. The Beast Titan. Is he your commander? Do we have to beat him in order to win? Emir's eyes narrowed slightly, disappointed him for his line of questioning. I don't know why you're asking all these questions. You're coming with us anyways, so you'll find out soon enough when we get to our hometown. Replied Reiner, shutting down the conversation. He then turned to Emir. Are you still with us? He asked. Yeah. She said. Reiner then removed the bindings around her feet and hands. He took her hand and lifted her from the ground. You've made the right choice. Traitor! Yelled Aaron, angered by Emir's acceptance of their offer. You think this is what Historia would want? Don't you dare talk like you know what's best for her. Yelled Emir. You don't even give a shit about anyone or anything except your bullshit goal to kill the Titans. Aaron growled at her while Alphonse just looked to the ground, acting set in anger and hoping they wouldn't notice the small sharp blade he transmuted on the wall and he was using to cut off his binds. A few hours had passed. Emir sat on a wooden chair at a table in the kitchen of the house drinking a cup of water from the house's stores. She wanted to be away from everyone and contemplate whether she had made the right choice. In the hallway upstairs, Reiner and Berthold talked to each other in hushed tones. Are you sure we can trust Emir? Asked Berthold. Her Titan might be small but it's fast, she could get away from us easily and she is the one who ate Marcel. It's likely that after she became a human again she cared only about her own survival, until she met Historia, a person she'd do anything for. There was a brief pause. We need Historia. She could have valuable information on the real royal family in the walls, meaning if Aaron isn't the coordinate then we'll still have to keep looking, and on top of that we either have to capture or kill Edward. Why are we going after them? Asked Berthold. Our mission was to capture the coordinate and these guys are only here to plug up Wall Maria. So long as we get the coordinate we have nothing to worry about. Berthold knew that was a lie, but all he wanted was to get their mission over and done with. Going after them all complicated the matter further. You know why it's important to get them, replied Reiner. Unlike our Titan powers, their abilities can be taught and spread. If those devils have a monopoly on that kind of power then the world will continue to be under threat from them. Also I doubt Ed will leave his brother behind. He did try to tail us back at Stohes. Aaron and Alphonse were still sat in the same spot, with the exception of his fingers and thumb. Aaron's hands were almost fully formed and were now tied up behind his back with a piece of cloth in his mouth to prevent him from biting on his tongue. He sat staring at the floor. Hey Aaron, whispered Alphonse. Aaron turned his head. Alphonse leaned forward slightly to revel his now freed hands. Aaron tried to say something but all that came out was a muffled sound. Keep it down, we don't want to alert them. When the time is right I'll take them down. Don't worry, I've handled fights against people faster and stronger than them. We just have to wait for the right moment, okay? Aaron nodded his head. Okay, said Berthold, looking off to the side. The next time we come here we'll get Historia, Annie, the founder and Ed, and then we won't have to come back here. Reiner placed his hand on Berthold's shoulder. We'll find her, we're not leaving anyone behind, promised Reiner. They both walked downstairs, catching the angry glances of Aaron and Alphonse. Not a single word was exchanged but the feelings of each other were more than clear. Reiner headed into the kitchen to meet with Emir. You go on, Reiner, said Berthold as he looked down on the two. I'll catch up. Berthold knelt down in front of Alphonse. Can you please tell me where you're keeping Annie? He asked. I don't want to have to hurt you. I'm sorry but I won't tell you. Replied Alphonse. He reminded of the time when Greed had him tied up back in Dublith and questioned him on his armor body. Except Greed was confident and smug while Berthold looked set and a little desperate. Unless you tell me about your hometown, he said, If Berthold was going to tell him, Al would have to lie to him. "You know I can't do that," said Berthold, a bit more aggressively. "Please, she's our friend and we're worried about her." "That may be so, but I'm not just going to give you information just because you asked," responded Alphonse. "You want something, then you'll have to give something up." "Fine, I didn't want to do this." Berthold got up from the floor and moved to kick Alphonse. Aaron's eyes widened and he tried to move. Alphonse watched Berthold's leg coming towards him. He quickly moved his hands from his back and grabbed Berthold's leg. Alphonse then pulled him forward, sweeping Berthold off his feet. Berthold slammed onto the ground. "Gah!" he exclaimed. Alphonse quickly clapped his hands and placed them on the binds around his ankles, deconstructing them. Berthold began to panic. He quickly got up to his feet and swung his right fist at Alphonse. Al ducks down, dodging the attack. He throws his own punch and strikes Berthold's left cheek, then immediately kneeing him in the gut. Berthold stumbles back and throws a left hook, but Alphonse blocks the attack. Berthold was a trained soldier since childhood, a warrior, and third place in the top 10 of his class. Berthold strikes with his right and lands a punch into Alphonse's side and kicks Alphonse back. Alphonse fell back onto the ground. He thought it would be enough to subdue him, but Alphonse quickly gets back onto his feet. Berthold was a trained soldier and fighter, but Alphonse has been fighting against far tougher opponents for years and went through hell being taught by Izumi Curtis. Berthold leans forward to grapple him, but Alphonse ducks under and delivers a swift kick to Berthold's stomach before sweeping under Berthold's legs. Berthold falls to the ground clutching his stomach. Alphonse turns back to Aaron. He rushes over and goes to remove Aaron's binds. Aaron began his muffled yelling yet again, trying to alert Al of Reiner, who had rushed into the room. Reiner took out one of the handles to his gear and attached his blade. He had no intention of killing Alphonse, but his hope was that it would intimidate him into standing down. He swung his blade from above. Alphonse grabs Reiner's wrist and kicks him in the stomach. With his free hand he grabs the wiring attached to the handle, deconstructs it from the rest of the gear and rips the handles out of Reiner's grasp. He then back kicks Reiner into a wall. Alphonse rushes over to Reiner, places his boot on his chest to pin him in place, and he points the blade at Reiner's head. "Do it!" yelled Aaron, but all that came out was muffled noise. Amir was watching from the doorway. She had watched as both Reiner and Berthold were beaten back by Alphonse. She began to re-evaluate her options, but her changing sides hinged on one thing: is he going to do it? Alphonse looked down at Reiner. His hand started to shake slightly as he fought an internal battle within himself on whether to plunge the sword into Reiner or just try and apprehend him. Just stand down!" yelled Alphonse. Amir's eyes narrowed. If he doesn't have the guts to kill these guys, then what's his plan going to be up against the world? She picked up a wooden chair and slammed it into Alphonse's back while he and Aaron were both focused on Reiner. The chair shattered into pieces. Alphonse fell forward into the wall and dropped the sword from his hand. Reiner struggled free from Alphonse's foot. He then placed Alphonse in a headlock and pinned him to the ground, making sure keep one of his arms under trapped. Aaron desperately tried to struggle free from his binds, but to no avail. "Hey!" came a voice from outside. Everyone froze and turned their attention towards the door. "It sounds like there's someone inside." The sound of running could be heard around the entrance of the house. "Help!" yelled one of the people upstairs. "Help, we're being held hostage." Suddenly the wooden blinds at the front of the house were shattered in by one of the people outside. Sunlight flooded the dark room to reveal a soldier, with the scout insignia on his left pocket, standing outside. "Holy shit!" he yelled as he looked into the house to see the shifters and Alphonse Elric. He raised his pistol in the air and fired out a red flare. "I've caught them!" "Damn it!" yelled Reiner. "Berthold, Amir, on me now!" Amir grabs Aaron and drags him with her. Reiner then bites down on his hand. There was a bright flash of light and the whole house suddenly collapsed in on itself. Alphonse looked upwards to see the armored titan standing over him and the others. It quickly grabbed him from the ground. As he was picked up, he caught sight of a small arm sticking out of a pile of broken wooden boards. Berthold fired his cables onto Reiner's back and lifted himself up onto Reiner's shoulder while Amir and Aaron were picked up with Reiner's other hand. Reiner then threw Alphonse into his mouth and slammed his jaws shut. All around them the sky was decorated with bright red smoke columns. Reiner then began to sprint towards Wall Maria in an effort to escape. 6 hours before. "Talk, recruit," ordered Levi as he stared Historia down. True to his word, Minister Nick refused to tell them the secret he had told her not too long ago. Levi, Hang and Nanaba were now interrogating the information from her. They had dismissed the rest of the 104th and the minister from the office, leaving Historia alone sitting at the desk as the three of them loomed over her. "I promise that I will tell you the secret he whispered to me," said Historia, "but first you have to promise me that you'll guarantee Amir's safety once we get her back, that she'd be cleared of any charges against her, and that she won't end up being killed by the military police like Aaron, Edward, and Alphonse almost were. She usually wasn't like this, being difficult with others and trying to barter with them. She was seen as the kind and selfless person who went out of her way to please people. But instead she was now giving the scout officers a hard time, but she had to. With Amir's fate looking uncertain, she had to use the one thing she had over them." "We don't have the authority to do something like that," informed Hang. Historia looked away, as if not to their faces when she answered, "Then I'm sorry, but until Amir's safety is assured, then I can't tell you." "Fine, if that's what'll take," said Levi calmly, his back leaning up against the side of the table. "Irwin's jurisdiction should extend to your friend, or at least he could argue that." He didn't like that Historia was making this difficult for them, and he had half a mind to force her to give up that secret from the minister, but from the sheer determination she had to defy her officers for her friend, a part of him did seem to respect that. "We're counting on you, bro." "Thank you, sir," said Historia. "If it's alright, I would like to talk to Irwin about this when he arrives." Ed looked at himself in the mirror of the HQ bathroom. He'd taken off the garrison jacket, leaving only his white shirt they gave him. He clapped his hand together and placed it onto his hair. The black substance poured from his hair into a wooden bucket. "I wonder what Winry's doing?" he thought to himself. "They're probably all worried sick about us." "Hey," called out a voice to his left. He turned to see it was Jean holding his scout jacket. "Found this, figured you might want it back." Ed took the jacket from him. "Commander Irwin might be here soon, so everyone else is gearing up." "Thanks," said Ed as he placed it on. "So you were trying to go out on your own?" asked Jean. "I don't know if you're either brave or stupid for thinking you and Mikasa alone could take on the armored and colossal titan. May sound crazy, but those two aren't the toughest guys I'd come up against," said Ed with a small smile on his face. "You know, Jean, I know another guy back on my world with the same name as you." "Heh, really?" replied Jean. "Yeah, guys in the military too, like you, and come to think of it, you two do sound alike. Expect he was second lieutenant, but like you he did have lady troubles," joked Ed. "What?" exclaimed Jean. "Aaron told me, said you used to stare at Mikasa a lot," replied Ed. "Damn Jaeger," replied Jean. "If it makes you feel better, Aaron was completely oblivious as to why," said Ed with a smirk on his face. "TCH, the guy can be a real blockhead," snickered Jean as he and Ed left the bathroom. The sound of a bell rang through the city as a large column of soldiers arrived through Walsina and into Stohes. As they neared the military HQ, the signs of a battle taking place became more and more evident as the scale of destruction worsened the further down they went. Irwin entered the HQ and approached the office. He opened the door to find his subordinates and a recruit. Historia got up from her seat and saluted him. "Sir," she said. "At ease, recruit," said Irwin. "You're one of the top 10 of the South Division, Crystal Lens." "Yes, sir," replied Historia. "So what's the situation?" asked Irwin. "Reiner and Berthold caught on to our trap. They managed to get away, capturing Aaron Jaeger and Alphonse Elric, but they also caught a recruit by the name of Amir who also happened to be a shifter herself," said Levi. He then looked over to Historia and placed his hand on her head. "Also, this little brat has something to ask from you. She got Minister Nick to give up some secrets from the church and won't tell us unless we guarantee the safety of her friend." Irwin looked at Historia. His towering figure cast a shadow over her. He turned to his subordinates. "All of you get our forces ready. I'll talk to Krista alone." The three have left the room, leaving Irwin and Historia alone to discuss Amir's future. Outside of the military HQ, the rest of the 104th and Edward, dressed in full combat uniform and ODM gear, waited with the reinforcements brought by Irwin. The street was crammed with horses and soldiers, all talking to each other and all waiting for the commander. "Are you sure you guys want to do this?" asked Armin, concerned for his friend's mental well-being. He turned to Edward. "Ed, I'm sorry for this, but I'd think it's best if you'd stay here. We can't risk losing you too." "You know that's not going to happen," Armin, replied Ed, like I've said, don't worry about me, I can handle myself. Our main goal right now is getting them back, and besides I'm the only one who can give you guys a shot at the armored titan. You're right, Armin conceded. We're all going, replied Connie, I want answers, I want to hear them tell us why. The rest of the 104th agreed with him, nodding their heads. Their attention was caught by two figures approaching them. It was Captain Ian Dietrich and team leader Rico Bertsinska. The group saluted them. At ease, said Ian. He turned his attention to Edward. Hey Edward, it's been a while, good to see you. Good to see you too, Ian, replied Ed. That's Captain Edward, said Rico in a serious tone. You're in the military, you should address your superiors by their rank. Good to see you too, Rico, replied Ed with a smirk on his face. Where's Midabi? Sweeping the south with Captain Woolman, said Ian. Ed tried to hide his sour feelings towards Woolman. He still hadn't forgiven the guy for almost killing him and the others. Word got around about what happened to Aaron and your brother. I'm sorry. Don't be, we're getting them back, replied Edward. Even now he couldn't stand other people's pity. Hey, came a shout from their side. It was Captain Levi. Form up with the rest of the scouts and get on your horses. Erwin will be out soon. That's RK, good luck, said Ian as he and Rico headed to the front of the column. A column reformed along the main road towards the open hole into Walrose's interior. Erwin and Historia left the HQ. Erwin headed for the head of the column while Historia joined back with her friends. So what happened? Asked Sasha. The commander promised he'd do whatever he could to protect her, said Historia. And what did you ask for? Questioned Levi to Erwin. The group of scout officers huddled up together. Please tell me you at least got something out of her. She only revealed that the secret had a larger implication on her, replied Erwin. I simply asked her that in return, should she play a larger role in the future, she must commit herself to it fully and without question, whether we succeed in saving her or not. Suddenly one of the scouts comes galloping through the open hole in Stohes on their horse. Nifa, called out Hang. Squad leader, commander, we might have found their location. She pulls out a map from her pocket and showed it in full view of the scout officers. The armored Titan's tracks stop around here. There are scattered houses to the southeast in the rural area of Walrose. It's likely they'll be there. Then that's where we'll search, said Erwin. He climbed up onto his horse, flanked by Levi and Hang. The mission is this, he yelled, his powerful voice reaching far back into the line of soldiers. Retrieve Aaron Yeager and Alphonse Elric from the armored Titan. The enemy has likely stationed themselves in southwest Walrose. He paused for a second for a gasp on air, inhaling deeply. Now ride, forward. He whipped the reins of his horse and galloped ahead, the over 100 solders of the scout regiment, garrison, and military police following. The large force scoured the countryside, searching through the abandoned villages and houses that sparsely occupied the area. The formation had broken off into groups and kept them within an 8-kilometer spread to keep their flares visible to the rest of the formation. Ed peered through the window of an abandoned cottage while Armin and Mikasa caught up with an old friend the formation had bumped into. Look at you kids, said Hans, you've all grown up so much, yet things seem to never change. You're still trying to look out for him. There's a world of difference between titans and bullies, replied Armin, with a sad smile on his face. Still, the kid has a knack for fighting even when the odds are stacked against him. I can't remember a fight he's ever won, but I can't remember a time he's ever given up. Ed turned his head to the side slightly to listen in on their conversation. He had a fire in him. Every time they'd knock him down he'd always get back up. I'd imagine those guys who kidnapped him and the others have their hands full dealing with him. I miss those days when I was nothing but some drunken soldier, but I can't have those days back if you guys aren't together. So know this, kids. If you three were to go into the very pits of hell, then I'll be there to follow you. Ed walked up to the group. You're Edward Elric. I remember you back at Trost. So you're in the scouts now? Yeah, you must be Hans, replied Ed as he extended his hand out. Aaron talked about you. All good things, I hope, said Hans, shaking his hand. Of course, replied Ed, smiling. I heard about your brother, said Hans. I'm sorry. He was quickly interrupted. You don't have to say you're sorry, said Ed, that won't change anything, we just have to focus on getting them back. Hans' mouth formed into a smirk. You know, that's something Aaron would have said. Suddenly the sound of a gunshot going off caught everyone's attentions. They looked up to see a column of red smoke rising from the south. Then just seconds later a bolt of lightning crashes into the ground near the red smoke flare. "That's them!" yelled Armin. Quickly they all mounted their horses and charged forward towards direction of where the lightning struck. All around them the sky was almost blocked out by a myriad of red smoke. Chapter 30, Duty or Desire. Alphonse squirms uncomfortably under the large tongue of the armored titans, pinning him down to the floor of its jaw. Thin rays of light escaped through the cracks along the titan's teeth, illuminating the dark, disgusting cave. Eren frantically thrashed about, trying fiercely to loosen his binds. However, Ymir had him pinned down, his stomach pressed up against the armored titan's shoulder. As quickly as he could, Reiner made a mad dash to Furwalrose, trying greatly to outrun the soldiers hot on his heels. But the speed of the horses and the restrictive ability of his titan allowed groups of scouts and the garrison to quickly catch up to him. Berthold watched as two members of the garrison leapt from the horses and fired their cables onto the back of the armored titan's head, narrowly missing both Berthold and Ymir, who stood on each side of the armored titan's shoulders while clinging onto its hair, and reeled themselves forward with their blades drawn ready to strike. Berthold quickly takes out his own blades and cuts the wires of the attack garrison soldiers, sending them tumbling to their deaths as they hit the ground. Suddenly 6 steel hooks pierce through armored titan's plating on the side of its face as 3 scouts fired their cables onto the side of left Reiner's head. Reiner lifts up his hand and grabs their wires, pulling the hooks from his head, small fragments of his armor picked from his face, and violently flings them onto the ground, their screams quickly silenced with the sound of a sickening thud. So far they've been able to hold off incoming attacks and narrowly avoiding the desperate oncoming attacks made by the garrison and scout regiment. The small group of soldiers that were pursuing them were now all dead. No going back from this, thought Ymir. But very quickly more and more soldiers began to come into view, trying to swarm them like predators chasing their prey as trails of red smoke were shot in their general direction, and it was only just a matter of time before Mikasa, Levi, or Edward caught up with them. Berthold looked towards Ymir, who watched with an anxious look on her face at the ever-approaching ranks of walled humanity pursuing them. A desperate plan crept into his mind. Ymir. He called out, catching her attention, "We can't outrun them like this, you need to buy us some time and disrupt their formation." Ymir gave Berthold an incredulous look. "Are you nuts?" She yelled back. "They'll kill me." "Your titan is the fastest out of all of us," yelled Berthold, trying to convince her. "Please. If I do it then I'll be a sitting duck, but you've got a chance, please help us." Ymir continued to look at Berthold with a look of disbelief until a sudden idea came to mind. "Wait," she thought, "this is my chance. If I have to knock these guys back then I should also get Historia while I'm at it." "What?" yelled Berthold, a shocked look on his face. "No, we don't have time for that," he responded, his voice filled with anxiety. Reiner turned his head slightly to the side as if to look at Ymir. He wanted to emerge from his titan and respond but couldn't. The situation called for him to keep moving and for Berthold to make the call. "Screw you, you tall sweaty bastard!" shouted Ymir. "If you want my help then that's my demand. I'll disrupt the formation and go after Historia, or we can all get caught by scouts." Berthold turned his head to the armored titan's nape as if hoping for Reiner to burst out and make the decision himself. Berthold was hoping, praying, Reiner would do so. "No, Berthold!" yelled Ymir, "you make the call, now or never. Either I go after Historia or we get overrun." Berthold turned back to Ymir and then to the armored titan's nape. Clenching his teeth he could feel the panic within him beginning to erupt. "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it!" he thought. "Okay," he yelled, "go after Historia, but please just help us," he cried. Ymir's eyes quickly softened with a look of pure relief on her face. "Get over here and take Eren," she called out. Berthold swung over to her side and held a thrashing Eren onto Reiner's shoulder. "Take out one of your blades," she asked. Berthold quickly slammed his handles onto his blade and unsheathed it from its scarab. Ymir pressed the palm of her hand onto its razor-sharp edge and the blade cutting cleanly into her hand, leaving a straight line of red. She leapt from the shoulder of the armored titan and suddenly, out of a blindingly bright explosion, a 5-meter-tall titan with razor-sharp teeth and claws crashed onto the ground and sprinted towards the formation. "That's a flash!" yelled Mikasa, the bright explosion of light catching her eye. "But Reiner's already transformed," stated Armin as the memory of the flash of lightning striking the ground in the distance played in his mind. "It's Ymir, she must have escaped." "You think she's got Al and Eren with her?" asked Ed riding alongside them. We can only pray that's the case, commented Hans. I'm not much of a praying man, replied Ed, I'll just have to go see it myself. He then whipped the reins of his horse and shot forward into the direction of the flash, moving quickly ahead of the others. Ed, wait! Yelled Armin as he stretched out his arm as if to stop him. Mikasa, Armin! Yelled Hans, catching their attention, I'm moving back into my squad, you kids stay safe. He yelled before riding off to the side. One of them transformed, stated Hang, who was riding alongside Erwin and Levi. It must be Ymir. That initial transformation was Reiner's, definitely. And we'd see the colossal titan by now if it were Berthold, added Levi. They're not dumb enough to try and use that slow-ass mountain against an entire formation. If it's Ymir then we'll link up with her, stated Erwin, staring resolutely into the horizon, Walrose quickly coming into view. Soldiers, converge onto the location of the light. He yelled, his voice carried across the area, do not engage the titan. Ymir is not an enemy of humanity, declared Historia as Erwin listened to her intently. She saved my life and the lives of our comrades when the titans attacked the castle. She even tried to attack the fur-covered titan leading the attack. It's got to be Ymir! Yelled Sasha as they approached the 5-meter titan, its long arms, messy hair, and raven black eyes coming into view. It sat there waiting for them. It is her. Groups of soldiers began to surround her as more and more converged on her position. Some shot flares into the air to signal their location. Ymir, where's Eren? Asked Connie urgently. Where's Reiner and Berthold? Asked Jean, did they get away? But Ymir didn't respond. Instead she only moved her head from side to side as if she was looking for someone in the ever-growing crowd. What is she looking at? Asked Mina as she turned her head from side to side trying to find what Ymir was looking for. More and more people began to join the crowd as they all stared at the 5-meter titan before them. It looked as though a quarter of the formation was watching her. Hey! Yelled Connie, come on you big ugly freak, we're running against the clock here. Come on, thought Ymir, impatiently. Ymir! Yelled a voice from the back. The 5-meter titan head snapped towards the familiar voice. It was Historia, riding on her horse galloping towards Ymir. Something's not right, muttered Rico, as she and Ian observed the titan. She looked towards the crowd, whose eyes were all on Ymir. Her own eyes then trailed back towards Walrose. That's when she caught sight of a bulky titan climbing along the stone beam of the wall. It's a try-dash. She tried to warn them, but before she could finish her sentence, Ymir titans pounced from the ground and grabbed Historia with one of her large hands, her titan body crashing into some unlucky soldiers in her path and sent them colliding into the ground with their horses. Huh! Exclaimed Historia as watched Ymir's titan open its mouth, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The titan then threw her into its wide jaws, like a child throwing a small piece of candy into mouth. She quickly turned her head towards a group of soldiers who watched her with a look of terrified shock. She had caught them completely off guard. They must have thought I was on their side. They quickly fumbled for their handles and latched on the blades from their scarab, but Ymir quickly flings her massive body onto the group, slamming into them and their horses and crushing some of them under the weight of her titan. She clenched her hand into a tight fist and swings it into a group of garrison soldiers. She swiped her claws at an oncoming scout who had their blades drawn and charged towards her. Ymir's nails sliced through the poor soldier and their horse, the bloody chunks of their body splattering onto the grass. All units engage the enemy titan, ordered Ian, pointing his blade at her. The Ymir quickly raised her claws to her face as if to dare any of them to attack her. Ymir, you traitor! Yelled Jean, although he was angry at her for keeping her titan ability a secret, and in the past he never really trusted her because of her secretive nature. When she placed herself in harm's way during the battle at the castle and was willing to tell them everything, he thought that perhaps now would be a good time to trust her. He now felt incredibly foolish for making such a judgment. Damn it, Ymir, not you too! Yelled Connie as he watched another one of his friends turn against them. Ymir turned her head towards her friends, who looked at her with a mixture of pain and scorn which stood in stark contrast to the looks of relief that were on their faces only seconds ago. I'm so sorry, she thought you wouldn't understand, but this is something I have to do. Ymir pounced off the ground and towards her friends in a group of scouts. Suddenly a massive stone fist burst from the ground towards her. She quickly stretches out her hands and bounces off the incoming fist, landing roughly on the ground. Bright blue sparks of light danced just off the corner of her eye. She turned her head to see Edward with his hands placed on the ground. Do I have to beat you too? He thought. His eyes quickly scanned the damage she had done and the people she had killed. You're gonna pay for that. Threatened Ed. I'll be after those other two bastards once I'm done with you. Amir was ready to pounce on Ed when the sound of more galloping horses catches her attention. Levi! Yelled Irwin, apprehend the shifter. Captain Levi! Thought Amir apprehensively. Mikasa! Yelled Armin, as he watched her gallop forward towards Amir. Damn it, you two! Amir quickly turned around and began sprinting towards Wall Rose, Reiner standing upon the wall with Berthold waiting for her. After her! Yelled Irwin, Levi, take teams 1 and 2, pursue her. A group of scouts led by Levi chased after the 5-meter Titan. Ed quickly jumped onto the saddle of his horse, whipping the reins and following them. Irwin's eyes scanned the mess of injured and dead scattered across the small space of land. What happened? That Titan shifter attacked us, responded Ian as he helped up an injured soldier. She swallowed up one of the recruits then launched her attack, took us by surprise. Ian's grip on his handle tightens as he thought about his inability to act sooner. She played us for fools and bought the enemy time to run. So they know about her too, thought Irwin. She's important to the church, central government, and the Titan shifters, but why? Why is the illegitimate daughter of a lord so important to this many groups? That's the question we have to find out. How many are dead? Irwin asked solemnly. Looks like less than 20 dead, replied Ian. She's really done a number on our formation. With all due respect, Commander, we should have never have trusted a Titan shifter, said Rico angrily, especially one that's ousted herself less than 2 days ago. Commander! Came a voice from the side. Irwin turned his head to see Nanaba galloping on her horse towards them. She frantically moved her head from side to side observing the carnage. Commander, what happened? She asked, agitated at the sight of the dead and wounded. Recruit Amir had turned against us, informed Irwin. She's sided with the enemy. Irwin walked up to Nanaba. Nanaba, the shifter has taken Historia, he said in a hushed tone. Our main priority will be the recovery of Aaron Yeager and Alphonse Elric, but we'll need to recover Historia Rice if we're to find out the Rice family's connection to the Wall cult and the central government. I'm tasking you with her recovery. If you find an opening, then take it. Of course, Commander, replied Nanaba. With a swift heave the armored Titan lifted Amir's Titan from the side of the wall and onto the top. Amir looked down off to the side of Wall Rose to see the scouts just reaching the wall. They're almost here! Yelled Berthold. We have to leave. The scouts fired their hooks onto the top after them. Ordered Levi. We can't let them escape. The group reeled themselves upwards towards the Titans standing on the wall. Amir quickly grabbed onto the armored Titan's back with Berthold. The group then slid down from the wall and into Wall Maria just as the scouts landed onto the wall. Ed ran to the edge of the wall facing Wall Maria's interior and quickly caught sight of the armored Titan running off from Wall Rose. Bastards! Yelled Edward, viciously, get back here. He was about to jump off the wall when Levi grabbed him by his cloak. Don't be an idiot, said Levi. We can't go after them without our horses. We'll need to get the elevators from one of the districts and dash. Don't bother, said Edward, interrupting Levi, and yanking himself free from his grip. Ed walked towards the edge of the wall. Captain, can you move the horses? He asked, though it sounded more like a demand. Ed leapt into Rose's interior, fired his cables onto the wall, and he swung down onto the ground. Only a couple of meters away from Wall Rose, the formation began to lick its wounds after Amir's surprise attack. So Amir's working with them? Asked Armin. It's like everyone we've ever known is turning on us, said Sasha, staring at the ground with a look of sadness on her face. Why is this happening? Thought Mina, sitting down on the grass next to her horse, her arms resting on her knees. Reiner, Berthold, Amir, Annie, why have you turned against us? Mikasa remained on her horse and stared into the direction Amir had run off to. There was a bitter look on her face as the angry within her started to boil over her for not being there to stop Amir and her inability to kill Reiner back at Stohes. I won't fail this time, she promised herself. I'll kill them all if I have to. If Levi hadn't caught up to them, then it's safe to say they're gotten away, stated Hang as Irwin and the other scout, garrison, and military police officers listened intently to her. She placed her finger onto Wall Maria and glided it down to Shiganshina district. This is our best bet in where they're going. Suddenly the ground underneath them began to violently shake. A deep rumbling sound could be heard and the area beside Wall Rose in front of them was blocked out by a large slanted mountain of dirt and rock. What the hell? muttered Ian as he and the other garrison soldiers scouts watched in complete awe at the sight. "Hey, Erwin!" yelled Levi as he rode his horse up to the officers. "Ed's made a ramp over the wall, we can still catch up with the armored brat." "Then we haven't a moment to lose," replied Erwin. He turned towards the mass of soldiers. "Redeploy the formation, the mission to retrieve Aaron Yeager and Alphonse Elrix continues." There was a mass scramble as everyone hastily climbed onto the saddles of their horses. Levi turned to face Hang, who had an unusual grin on her face while she softly giggled to herself. "What are you smiling at, shitty glasses?" he asked. "You know, Levi," said Hang, "even with high expectations I've really underestimated the power of their alchemy. When this is over I'm gonna get those two to teach me." "God help us when you do," replied Levi, rolling his eyes slightly. "Rico!" yelled Ian as he climbed onto his horse. "Take your team and secure the entrance. Make sure the Titans don't use it to cross over. I'll take the rest of the company with Commander Erwin." Rico clenched her teeth and narrowed her eyes slightly at Ian. She wanted to follow her comrades into battle too. "Yes, Captain," she replied, complying with the order. "Team, secure the ramp. Make sure not a single Titan tries to cross over into Walrose." Ed's grip on the reins of his horse tightened as he watched from on top of the wall the armored Titan running off into the distance. He turned his head back towards the formation charging towards him. "Come on, come on, come on," he muttered impatiently. As the soldiers hit the base of the ramp, Ed quickly turned his horse towards the ramp into Wall Maria's interior and rode downwards, chasing after the shifters that took Alphonse and Aaron. Emir placed her hand over her mouth and with a disgusting cough she spat out Historia, who was now soaked in thick saliva. Historia gasped violently as fresh air began to fill her lungs, followed by an intense coughing fit. Aaron turned his head as far back as he could and caught sight of Historia within the clutches of Emir's Titan. He once more tried to struggle free, but it was all in vain as Berthold held him down. A thick cloud of smoke suddenly burst from the Titan's nape, revealing Emir, the nerves of her Titan still connected to her face. "Hey Chris," Historia, Emir said between a few hard coughs, "you're probably angry at me for eating you back there. Sorry about that." Historia looked to Emir and then to Berthold, who was holding down Aaron, who, in turn, was thrashing about. "Emir, what are you doing?" asked Historia, who was both confused and terrified. "Where's Alphonse?" "We came to save you 3 dash. "I don't need saving," shouted Emir with an irate look on her face. Her face quickly softened. "I'm working with Reiner and Berthold now. You're coming with us. You can't stay inside the walls. There's no future for the walls." Emir let out a soft sigh. "Listen, it's not so bad living on the outside. For one, there's no one around to tell you that the world would be better off without you, which is already a plus." Aaron glared at Emir. "But getting eaten by Titans is so much better?" "Well, of course the Titans wouldn't tell me that. They'd be too busy trying to eat me," Historia exclaimed. "Hey, nobody's perfect," Emir shot back. "You just got to look past that. You remember what Armin said? They're people after all, and besides they're no going back for me, not after betraying the walls." "That's not true," exclaimed Historia. "Emir, we have to leave. The commander promised your protection if you come with us. Please, there is a future in the walls." "Are they making you do this?" "If so, then let me go and we can fight them together. No matter what, I'm on your side." Emir looked at Historia with a guilty expression. "I really don't deserve someone like you," she thought to herself. "What the hell?" yelled Berthold as he caught sight of the advancing force which was quickly catching up to them. He quickly turned his head to face Emir. "The scout regiment are still pursuing us." Reiner turned his head slightly, focusing on the ever-growing sound of horses galloping towards them. There's no way they could have crossed over the wall that quickly, but he knew exactly the person capable of doing it. "Edward, that son of a bitch." "Heads up, Erwin," called Hang. "We've got Titans coming in from the left," pointing to the pillars of red smoke reaching into the sky. "Not like we can stop the bastard in his tracks," said Levi. "Our blades are close to useless against his armor." "No, we can stop them," replied Erwin. "Hang, you continue to lead the formation with Levi. If the armored Titan changes course, then fire off a green flare in its direction." He then turned his head further to the right. "Runners, relay that message to the others also. If either Aaron or Alphonse are rescued, then fire off a blue flare, one for each." "Yes, sir," replied the scouts, as they turned their horses and moved back. "Nanaba, take second squad and follow me. We're moving to those Titans. Tell the wings of the formation to converge into the center," ordered Erwin. What the hell are you planning on doing, Erwin? Questioned Levi, his eyes narrowing as he looked at him. Only what's necessary, responded Erwin, just continue onwards and follow my commands. A steel hook pierced into the armor plating of Reiner's Titan. Berthold watched as a lone scout reeled himself upwards towards him with their blades drawn. Emir's Titan quickly snagged at the cable and threw the scout onto the ground. His screams of terror were quickly followed by a low thud as his body hit the ground. Edward watched as groups of soldiers tried in vain to rescue Aaron from the other shifters. He caught sight of Aaron being pinned down by Berthold on the armored Titan's left shoulder, but not matter where he looked he couldn't see Alphonse among them. Damn it, where are they hiding him? He thought about going up there to fight against them himself, but he knew it would likely end in his death like the others who tried, and he wouldn't know where to hit. If he was going to rescue Alphonse, then he'd need Aaron's help to do it. He turned his head to the right to see Mikasa about to overtake him. Mikasa, he called out, catching her attention, I'm going to rescue Aaron. This didn't work out too well last time, but just follow my lead. He finished with a sly smile. Mikasa fired her cables onto the side of Emir's face and swung her blades at her eyes, slicing open left side of Emir's face, which cut through her eye. The Titan let out a loud screech from the pain. Berthold once more took out the blade from his scarab and raised it towards Mikasa, all while pinning Aaron down with his knee. So focused on Mikasa, he never saw Ed come up from the side, and before he realized it he was dealt a swift kick to the face, the sole of Ed's boot slamming into Berthold's temple, knocking him off Aaron. Emir quickly grabs Berthold before he could plummet down to the ground. Ed quickly grabbed hold of Aaron. He jumps off the armored Titan's shoulder and swings downwards, with Mikasa, onto their horses, the three riding away from the armored Titan. Berthold takes notice of their escape. He fires his cables onto the back of Reiner's head and reels himself forward. Reiner! He yells. There was panic in his voice. There got Aaron. The armored Titan quickly turned his head to the left to see two horses quickly riding off with their objective. That son of a bitch, thought Reiner. He quickly turned to the side and dug his heels into the ground. Chunks of dirt and rocks were scrapped from the ground as he came to a slow halt. He then began sprinting after them. The armored Titan's changing course, yelled Hang. Grabbing her flare gun, she pointed it to the armored Titan and fired, a trail of green smoke heading towards it. Soldiers, change course. Looks like they might have saved them, commented Levi. The sound of pistol being fired off quickly grabbed their attention as they caught sight of a single line of navy blue smoke, well, one of them at least. Mikasa grabbed onto the reins of Ed's horse, guiding it forward as Ed holstered his pistol, leaving a navy blue column of smoke behind them. He turned to Aaron and began to remove his binds. Aaron, where did they put Alphonse? He asked urgently. Aaron quickly positioned himself upright onto the horse. Reiner put him in his mouth. He exclaimed, I don't think Reiner ate him, they need him alive. Ed quickly turned his head back to the armored Titan to see the large 15-meter Titan charging towards them and what looked to be a few people hanging from the armored Titan. Berthold stood on the Reiner's left shoulder. Emir hung from his right while Historia was clinging onto Emir's long hair, and the three watched as Reiner began to chase after the three. Emir burst from her Titan's nape. It'd be faster if I go after them, she stated. Don't, said Berthold, we still have Ed's brother, he won't leave him, and Aaron's too proud to let someone else fight his battles, either we catch them or they come to us. His tone seemed a lot more cold and calculated, a far cry from his more nervous and indecisive self. Emir was about to respond when suddenly the sound of cables being fired from the belt barrels and steel hooks breaking into the armored plating caught their attention. Emir was about to snag at the wires until Historia quickly pulled at her hair to stop her. Emir, wait. Reiner. Berthold, yelled Connie as he landed onto the armor Titan's back. The two stared at each other for a few seconds. There were so many things that needed to be said between the two. Stay back, was the only thing that Berthold could say as he raised his blade at Connie, trying to keep his distance from him. Berthold turned his head away from Connie. He couldn't look him in the eyes. The sound of metal cables behind him caught Berthold's attention. He turned around to see Jean, landing onto the side of Reiner's face. Hey, Berthold, said Jean. His voice was slightly shaky as the two now came face to face again for the first time after the betrayal. Quickly more people began to land onto the armored Titan, Armin, then Sasha, and then Mina, all of them now staring at Berthold, who was waving his blades at them while actively avoiding making eye contact with them. You can't even look at us, huh? asked Jean. You know I should beat you to a pulp, Berthold, seeing as you're the reason my home got swarmed by titans a few months ago. His tone of voice was almost jokey for a serious threat. You, Reiner and Annie, you were all tricking us? Asked Connie, his voice aching with sadness. All this time, you three were playing us for fools. Did we all mean so little to you three? Asked Mina, sorrowfully. Thomas, Nick, Milius, they all died because you broke down that gate. So many of our friends died. After all we've been through, I thought we were your friends. This all has to be a mistake, exclaimed Sasha. You three wouldn't just betray us like this. Berthold felt as though he was about to break. The full weight of his sins bear down on him. Please stop, it wasn't like that. He shut his eyes tightly, trying to hold in the flood of tears. He tried desperately to hold his arms straight while pointing his blades at them, trying not to show any weakness to his friends. He wanted to block out their voices, but he simply couldn't. Do you guys seriously plan on catching up with those horses and making a quick getaway? Questioned Jean. After everything we've been through and everything you've done, Berthold, remember the jokes we'd used to make about your sleeping posture? We'd never know how you'd do it. Hell, we even used to try and predict the weather from it. Jean's face then began to harden and his tone became more bitter. Now I wonder how you guys were able to sleep at all, next to the people whose lives you've ruined, no less. Was all of it bullshit? Demanded Connie, with a feeling of desperation, about getting through all this and about remaining friends till the end and going out for drinks. You remember that, Berthold? It's what you told us. Were you just lying about that? Berthold's hands began to shake, the blades rattling slightly in the handle. Look at me, Berthold, Connie yelled. Was it all a lie? Berthold slowly opened his eyes and turned to face them, his friends, with tears welling in his eyes. It was only for a second, but he got a good look at their faces. He quickly broke under the pressure of his guilt and hid his face, his hands, the handles of his ODM gear pressing against his cheeks. I didn't want this. He cried as a flood of tears fell from his eyes. Who can just kill people and accept it? Who the hell would choose to become these monsters? You think we wanted to do this? The group watched Berthold, slack-jawed, as he broke down before them. People hate us, of course they do. The things we've done are unforgivable. We can't live with this guilt, but being your friends made it just a bit easier. He lowered his hands and looked upon the shocked and saddened faces of his friends. Yes, we hid this from you, we hid this from everyone, but we really did think of you as our friends. I know you can never forgive us, but please, someone, anyone, find us. Ed glared daggers at the armored titan charging after them, his eyes focused on the titan's rows of teeth. He quickly devised of a plan to rescue Alphonse from the jaws of the armored titan. You guys get going, he said, his voice possessing its usual courage. I'm going after Al. No way, replied Aaron. We're not leaving you to do this alone. Aaron raised his hand to his face and began opening and closing it. My body's healed now. I can transform into my titan. You helped get Aaron back. I'll help you get Alphonse back, added Mikasa. Besides, I still have to kill them. Edward couldn't help but smile at the two. All right, first we've got to dash. Very quickly his attention was drawn to a low rumbling sound which seemed to grow in its intensity. The three quickly turned their gaze forward. What the hell? Yelled Edward. Berthold, Reiner, you don't have to do this, pleaded Armin. Just stop chasing after Aaron and hand Alphonse over. You can leave, just go back to your hometown. I'm sorry, Armin, replied Berthold, looking at the person he considered to be a close friend during their cadet years. We simply can't. He then raised his blades back up. This can only end in two ways. Either we get Aaron and Alphonse, or one of you is going to have to kill M-. Guys! Yelled Historia, she eyes focused ahead. It's Commander Erwin and he has a Titan horde following him. The group turned their heads to the front, their eyes greeted to the view of a large horde of Titans trailing a squad of scouts trying to escape the Titans' clutches on their horses. Erwin, you crazy shit, growled Levi as he and Hang caught sight of the Titans in front of the armored Titan. Soldiers, move now, ordered Hang, firing off a flare to her right. The 104th quickly leapt from the armored Titan and swung themselves down onto their horses. Edward and Mikasa sharply pull the reins of their horses to the right, trying to gallop away from the charging Titan horde. Historia hung onto Emir's hair while Berthold clung onto Reiner's hair from behind. Erwin sharply extended his arm rightwards. Soldiers disperse, he ordered. Move from the Titans. Drawn to the armored Titan before them, the Titans threw themselves onto Reiner, colliding into his Titan. They grabbed at his arms and legs, holding him in place, while trying desperately to bite through its heavy armor. The force of impact threw Alphonse around in the armored titan's mouth, freeing him from under its tongue. The muffled roars and rumbling clued him in on what had happened. From a safe distance the coalition of soldiers watched as the horde of titans kept the armored titan bogged down on the spot. "Who did we secure?" asked Erwin. "We've got Eren," replied Mikasa, "but Alphonse is trapped in the armored titan's mouth. We've got our titan shifter and one of the Elrics, we should just retreat while we still have a chance," said one of the MPs. "We can't risk more of our men like this." "Those boys are worth more than 10 of us," argued one of the scouts. "We can't let any of them fall into the hands of the enemy." "Would you like to tell that to the families of those men who are worth less than just one of those 3? The MP shot back. "Commander," called out Ed, "if you don't want to risk more lives then that's fine, but I'm still going after my brother. We'll meet you back at the ramp." "No, Edward, we're not leaving you here alone," replied Erwin. He wasn't about to let one of humanity's greatest assets go alone on the field, nor was he going to let humanity's enemies make off with one. He quickly turned his head to Levi. "Levi, teams 1 and 2 are under your command. Clear a path for us." He whipped the reins of his horse and moved further forward. "All squads, charge," he ordered, his booming voice heard across the field. The soldiers behind the commander looked at him dumbfounded and dismayed at what he was ordering them to do. "Humanity's future shall be decided here. If you wish to see Wall Maria recaptured within our lifetime then we must have the combined efforts of those 3. Now go. Recover Alphonse from the jaws of the armored titan, then retreat." He slammed the handles of his blade onto the left side of his chest. "Dedicate your hearts," he declared as he rode forward into the titan horde. "You heard the commander, get your asses moving," ordered Levi as he rode forward. Ed was the first to charge forward with the commander. "Ed, wait!" yelled Connie. Suddenly a large bolt of thunder struck the ground near them, the light blinding them for a second to reveal a familiar 15-meter muscular titan with long black hair, jagged teeth, and piercing emerald eyes. Eren's titan let out a deafening roar at the armored titan before making a charge forward into the fray, quickly catching up to the commander. "So that's what Eren's titan looks like," thought Hans as he observed the 15-meter titan charging forward. Mikasa quickly followed by Mina. Jean and Armin both steeled themselves and whipped the reins of their horses to charge forward. Quickly everyone began to charge forward, a thunderous war cry following them. Ymir tore at the nape of a 14-meter titan while Reiner began swatting away at them, his fists colliding into faces of the titans trying to devour him. A bright flash of light quickly caught his attention. His target, his whole reason for being here, was charging towards him heads up. Bird hold, he thought, expecting a rematch with Eren. "We'll just have to endure this a little longer." Some of the titans caught sight of the mass of soldiers charging towards them. They broke off from their attack and ran towards them. "How the hell are we going to slip past them?" muttered Jean, as he watched the titans run towards them. "Advance," ordered Erwin as he stuck out his right arm. Hidden amongst the trees, a titan on all fours leapt out and chomped down on his right arm, pulling him off his horse and quickly crawling away with the commander on all fours. Levi pulls his horse back as he watched in terrified shock at Erwin dangling from the titan's jaws. "Erwin!" yells Hang, panicking as the commander of the scout regiment and one of her friends gets taken away in the jaws of a titan. Erwin lifted his left arm forward, pointing his blade at the direction of the armored titan. "Advance." He ordered to everyone's shock, "Secure Alphonse Elric, carry on with the mission." Hang clenched her jaw, frustrated. "Soldiers, continue to charge." Levi growled at him as his grip on the reins of his horse tightens. "Erwin, you fucking idiot," he thought. "Team 1, save the commander," he yells as he charges forward. "Team 2, you're with me." He quickly leapt off his horse. He fired his cables onto an oncoming 13-meter titan and effortless swung around behind to slice open its nape. A 10-meter titan attempted to grab at him, sticking its arm out to get Levi into its clutches. Levi jumps from the slain titan's nape and cuts off the 10 meters fingers and with impossible speed rotates in a circle, slicing the titan's arm into large chunks of flesh before finishing it off with a swift cut to the nape. Eren sprinted towards Reiner, aiming to tackle his to the ground and smash the armored titan's teeth in with his fists. When a 12-meter titan tackles him from his side and sends them both onto the ground, the titan quickly pins Eren to the ground and began to gnaw at his shoulder. Eren throws the titan off to his side and begins punching it repeatedly in its throat. a cloud of smoke partially blocking his view. Suddenly a 15-meter titan grabs Aaron's head and left shoulder from behind, angling him to the side as it bite down on his nape. Mikasa quickly fires her cables onto the titan's neck. She reels herself forward and slashes at its nape. More titans began to descend upon Aaron. His titan let out another deep roar as it prepared to fight. Mina fired her hooks onto the side of the armored titan's face and pulled herself forward, landing squarely onto its armored cheek. She paused for a moment to catch her breath. Everything seemed to go by in a blur. First she was ducking under the hands of a 14-meter titan while a scout from Team 1 sliced its nape, and now she found herself the first scout to make it to Reiner. How have I not run out of luck at this point? She thought. She then turned her attention to the jaw of the armored titan. Now how am I going to do this? Trying to plant his boots firmly inside the mouth of a titan, while covered in saliva, is a difficult task, yet Alphonse managed to find his footing. He clapped his hands together and slammed them onto Reiner's teeth. Sparks of lighting illuminated the disgusting cave in a sky-blue color before the rows of front teeth shattered into pieces and a flood of light from the sun poured through. Alphonse covered his eyes adjusting to the light. He lowered his hand and stuck his head out from the hole in the armored titan's mouth. "Ow!" yelled Mina, catching his attention. She extended her arm outwards trying to reach him when suddenly slices at her arm, leaving a deep cut into her upper arm. She pulls her arm back and clutches at the wound. Both Mina and Alphonse look up to see Berthold standing on top of the armored titan's head. Berthold swings again, but this Mina just manages to deflect it with her own blade. Alphonse claps his hands together and places it onto one of the armored titan's teeth. A halberd sports from the tooth. Alphonse grabs hold of the weapon. He sticks his body out of the hole and thrusts the halberd at Berthold. Berthold quickly deflects the attack and takes a swipe at Alphonse, who narrowly dodges the attack. Suddenly the sound of more steel hooks breaking into the armor plating catches Berthold's attention. He turns to see Edward zooming towards him. Berthold swings his blade at Ed, but Ed quickly blocks the attack using his own ones. Their blades locked together, the two now found themselves in a standoff. "Go now!" yelled Edward to Alphonse and Mina. She quickly grabs Alphonse's hand, pulls him out of Reiner's mouth and swings them both down onto her horse. Ed turns back to Berthold. The two glared at each other through their locked blades. "It doesn't matter what you can do, you can't beat us," declared Berthold as he tried to push forward. "I'm sure your friend with the big nose thought the same thing," taunted Ed as he pushed his weight forward onto Berthold, "but now she's paying the price for her crimes, and so will you too." After the confrontation with his former friends and their objectives slipping away from them, Edward taunting him about Annie had caused Berthold to finally snap. "You weren't sent by God," he yelled. "You're an apostle of the devil, sent here to help his children." Suddenly Berthold felt as if all the air had been taken out of him. His eyes widened and he looked down to see a blade pierced through his stomach. Ed moved back as far as he could. He peered to the side of Berthold to see Levi. His face and uniform was drenched in steaming blood with his blade buried in Berthold's lower back. "Ed, go now!" he yelled as he detached the handle, leaving the large blade buried into Berthold. The two quickly swing down, angling their fall onto some nearby horses. Berthold fell from the top of Reiner's head. His cables left him dangling in Reiner's field of vision. Nearby, Erwin watched as both Levi and Edward made their escape. Clutching the bloody stump where his arm should be, "All squads retreat," he ordered. Aaron threw the 5-meter titan across the field, rolling in the dirt. "Get out of my way," he thought. Mikasa landed on his right shoulder, wiping the blood from her face. Aaron was about to charge into Reiner until the sight of a blue flare caught his attention. They got Alphonse. Quickly groups of soldiers began their escape from the horde and the armored titan. Aaron's titan let out a throaty growl of frustration at the thought of not finishing off Reiner and Berthold. "This isn't over," he thought as he turned his back on them and make a break with the other soldiers escaping. The 8-meter titan slammed Ymir onto the ground. Ymir's claws pierced into its neck trying to hold the titan back. The titans roared at each other as they fought. Historia quickly fired her cables into the nape of the titan and lacerated it. The titan collapsed dead onto Ymir while Historia swung herself onto a nearby tree. "Another kill to my name," she muttered to herself. She fell onto the ground and began running towards Ymir. "Ymir, are you dash?" "Historia!" yelled Nanaba as she scooped her off the ground, holding her with one arm while she rode her horse. Historia looked up at her. "What are you doing?" she asked, somewhat panicked. "We're escaping," stated Nanaba. "Both Aaron and Alphonse have been secured and I've been tasked with your rescue." "No!" yelled Historia as she tried to struggle under Nanaba's grasp. "Let me go." "Are you serious?" questioned Nanaba. She turned around to see a familiar 5-meter titan trailing them from behind. "We have to go with Reiner and Berthold," yelled Historia. "If I don't then those two are going to kill her. They need me and I have to be there to protect her. If your friend wants to live then she will follow us back into Walrose and she'll answer for collaborating with those two and the deaths of those soldiers," replied Nanaba. "But you are going back into the walls with the rest of us, that is an order." Nanaba turned her head forward. "Beside, I doubt she's doing this for her sake. I may not know much about your relationship with her but it's clear to me that she cares about you. I don't know a lot of people who would willingly cut their own arm off to protect a person who they would only consider as their comrade." Suddenly a large shadow was cast over them. They looked up and watched in dumbfounded terror as a 15-meter titan had been thrown over them. The mass of soldiers galloping on horseback could only stare at the titan raining down on them and crashing onto the ground, blocking their path. "Crazy son of a bitch!" yelled Jean as he turned his head back to face Reiner. Then another was thrown titan. This time it collided into Aaron's back, knocking him and Mikasa down onto the ground. Using her gas, Mikasa managed to cushion her fall slightly, however she rolled onto the ground roughly, her face rolling over a sharp rock leaving a single deep cut just below her right eye. The titan quickly got up and pinned Aaron to the ground. It then bit down on a part of his upper arm and tore off a large chunk of flesh from his titan body. Mikasa quickly got to her feet. She stumbled a bit, clutching at her ribs, before firing her cables onto the titan's upper back, pulling her forward and slicing open its nape. Aaron emerged from his titan, thin red lines covering his cheeks. He tore himself free from his titan body, slid down its neck and ran up to Mikasa. "Mikasa!" he called out. He held her up as she was about to collapse onto her knees. "I'm fine," she replied as she regained her balance. "Come on, we gotta get out of here," said Aaron, but before he could call for a horse, the two quickly noticed a low rumbling sound to the side of them. He turned his head to see another horde of titans approaching them, and a disgustingly familiar and ugly smile on one of their faces. Aaron felt his blood boil. His breathing quickly became erratic and he stared at the familiar titan with murderous intent in his eyes. "Mikasa, find a horse and get going," he said, barely containing his anger. "No," replied Mikasa, resolutely, "I'm staying with you. You're injured, you're in no shape to fight." Aaron responded, his anger now spilling over. "That doesn't matter," said Mikasa, "you told me to fight. If we lose we die, if we win we survive, but if we don't fight then we can't win, so I'm staying and I'm fighting with you." Even with his anger flaring up, Aaron couldn't help but feel touched that Mikasa remembered the words he told her all those years ago. "All right." He conceded, "but that titan's mine." He moved a few steps from Mikasa and raised his clenched fist to his mouth, all while never taking his eyes off the titan that ate his mother. Edward pulled his horse back as a 10-meter titan crashed into the ground in front of him. Mina's horse stood sharply onto its hind legs, causing both Alphonse and Mina to fall to the ground. The 10-meter titan slowly began to get up. Al panicked. He clapped his hands together and slammed them onto the ground. A large spike impaled the titan's head. Mina quickly got off the ground and pulled Alphonse up. "Sorry about that," thought Alphonse, looking back at the titan. Hang fired her cables onto the injured titan and quickly executed the large titan. "Edward, Alphonse," she yelled out, "get on a horse and head for Walrose." Edward didn't hear Hang. Instead he was focused on the 12-meter titan a few meters away from him. Within its clutches was a MP. He looked a bit like Kane Fury with his roundish face and slightly spiky hair, and he was about to be eaten alive by a titan. "If I don't do something then he's going to die," thought Ed, "but I can't kill them, they're people. The titans are humans turned into monsters, but does that still make them any less human?" The poor MP was now staring into the wide mouth of the titan. His head was about to move past its teeth. Suddenly the titan jerked forward and let out a pained shriek before collapsing onto ground, its large palms cushioning the fall of the MP. He turned to see Edward looking down at him. "You all right?" asked Ed as he helped him up. "Yes, thank you," replied the MP before he ran off after his horse. Edward looked back at the titan he'd slain. It wasn't his first titan kill, it was one among over a dozen, but it was his first kill full knowing that these monsters were just people. He had knowingly killed a person. "I had to do it," There was no other way. "Brother," muttered Alphonse, "if the Titans were in fact people, then was there any way in turning them back to normal? Much like Kimball's former subordinates who were turned into Chimera, shouldn't they at least find a way to undo this?" Alphonse didn't believe it was hopeless for them because he didn't believe it was hopeless for Darius, Heinkel, Gerso, Zampano, and himself. Without warning, 2 more Titans, 5 and 4 meters, were thrown near them. "If we can't capture them, then I'll just have to kill them," thought Reiner. Just below his head, Berthold gripped the slowly healing wound in his stomach. He turned his head to see Eren fighting off another horde of Titans who'd wandered into the field. If everything went well, then Eren will have gotten himself eaten fighting the horde. Alphonse slammed his hands onto the ground. A pair of stone hands burst from the ground, grabbing at the 5-meter Titan's feet and swiped it off its feet and held it down. Levi watched precariously as Alphonse went out of his way to avoid killing the Titan. Moblet fired his cables at the 4-meter. He slashed at its eyes, blinding the Titan, while Hang went in for the kill. "Squad leader, more Titans will be here any second, we have to evacuate." Before Hang could respond, 2 more Titans, a 7-meter and a 9-meter, crashed down near them. Alphonse clapped his hands together and extended his arm to the side. A halberd rose from the ground within a bright blue circle of light. He clutched the weapon with both hands. Ed and Mina drew out a pair of new blades from their scarab, ready for a fight. Jean and Armin charged forward towards Eren and Mikasa. "Damn idiot!" yelled Jean. "Now's not the time to be fighting another Titan swarm." All of a sudden, another Titan, a 3-meter, was thrown in their direction, stopping them in their tracks. A 14-meter quickly followed, landing right next to them. "Out of the way, you bastards!" yelled Jean as he drew his blades out. They quickly evaded the Titan and continued towards Eren and Mikasa. "Hurry, Armin!" yelled Jean, looking back at Armin, not noticing the 3-meter Titan flying towards them. "Jean, look out!" yelled Armin, but it was too late. The Titan collided into their horses, sending them crashing onto the ground. Armin quickly got up from the ground and ran to a now unconscious Jean. He grabbed Jean by the hood of his cloak and desperately dragged him away while waving his blade at the approaching 3-meter Titan. "Jean, Armin!" yelled Connie as he slashed at the nape of the 3-meter Titan, saving his friends. Sasha quickly followed behind, still on horseback and holding onto the reins of Connie's horse. "Quick, you guys!" shouted Sasha. "Get on! Look out!" yelled Armin. "More Titans heading towards us." They all turned their heads to see a group of 4 to 3-meter Titans walking towards them. "Oakman!" muttered Connie as he stared at the Titans in disbelief at their incredibly bad luck. Ymir charged at Erwin, who was galloping away from a pursuing Titan. She stared at the commander with murderous intent. "You and that damn Edward Elric," she angrily thought. "You two ruined everything." She leapt off the ground and towards Erwin. "Commander!" yelled Nanaba as she and Historia trailed behind Ymir. Erwin turned to look at Ymir's Titan pouncing in his direction with her arms outstretched. He didn't feel fear in that moment, only anger and frustration over the idea that he may never fulfill his dream. Ymir's claws with over the commander and instead slamming into the Titan pursuing him, saving him from possible death. Erwin looked back, perplexed, while Nanaba breathed a sigh of relief. Historia leapt off Nanaba's horse. She fired his cables onto Ymir's head and landed squarely on her forehead. "Recruit!" yelled Nanaba. "Please, XO," pleaded Historia, "just let me talk to my friend." "Erwin!" yelled Hang as she ran towards Erwin, who was clutching at his stump. Levi quickly arrived at the scene, a new layer of blood covering him from the Titans he had slain in quick succession. "Erwin, we got to get you on a horse. We're practically running on fumes at this point," stated Levi, "and I'm down to my set of blades." "Go, forget about me," Erwin replied, his voice restrained as he held back the immense pain in his right side. "I'm replaceable, just focus on getting those 3 out of here, that's my final order." Levi glared at Erwin before slapping him on the back of his head, staining Titan blood in his blonde hair. Erwin looked up to Levi confused. "Stop being an idiot and get on a horse," yelled Levi. Eren slammed the 15-meter Titan onto the ground, face buried in the dirt as Eren bit into its nape and tore the chunk of flesh from his neck. A 14-meter quickly grabbed Eren's left arm from behind. It bit down onto his upper arm and ripped his arm off. Eren swiftly turned around and threw a hard blow to the Titan's face, sending him flying off to the side. Mikasa slashed at the nape of a 9-meter Titan looking to grab one of Eren's legs. A 6-meter Titan charged towards her. she fired her cables onto a nearby tree. Using her gas, she swung around, the Titan following her, moved behind the Titan and carved a large hole into its nape. Mikasa fired her cables onto Eren's shoulder, detaching her blades and attaching new one. They faced the other Titans, and the Titan they were after, the one with the sinister smile, seemed to be hiding behind the others. "I'll kill every last one of them if it means I can get my hands on you," Eren thought as his Titan let out deep loud roar. Hands sliced at the ankles of a 10-meter Titan, allowing one of his subordinates to quickly slash at the nape of the Titan. He's quickly alerted to the roar nearby to see Eren's Titan confronting another horde. "Eren, Mikasa!" He thought. He quickly took hold of his horse. "Hands!" yelled Ian, catching his attention. "The MP's line is about to break. Take your men and reinforce them." Ian peered to the side to see Eren's Titan staring down another Titan horde. "Eren can handle it," said Ian, trying to reassure him. "Kid took out 20 Titans in Trost. He can handle them." A 5-meter Titan leapt at Eren, its jaws opened wide to take a large chunk out of him. Eren countered with a uppercut to the Titan's mouth, smashing the top part of its head. Before stomping at its neck, he turned back to face the Titan that killed his mother. Almost there, he thought, though his Titan didn't show it. There was a hungry grin on his face. His breathing was heavy and he had spent most of his energy fighting off the other Titans. He only had a little bit of strength left in him to kill that Titan. Mikasa collapsed onto her knees, trying to catch her breath while holding the left side of her body, fighting back the pain. She looked down at her blades, her last pair. They looked like they were about to break. "Keep going," she thought as she forced herself up. A 12-meter Titan slowly approached her. She fired her cables onto the neck of the Titan, looking to quickly end its life. She pressed the trigger for the gas, which shot her forward into the air. Blades drawn, she was ready to kill this Titan. Suddenly the Titan swung its hand at her, looking to grab Mikasa. She swings her blades at the incoming hand, slicing off its fingers but shattering her blades in the process. The Titan then grabs Mikasa with its other hand, squeezing at her ribs. "Ah!" she cries. Eren turns his head towards Mikasa, witnessing the 12-meter Titan holding her in its large hands. Mikasa. He looks back at the Titan with the wide smile on its face, approaching him, and then back to Mikasa. His opportunity for vengeance was right there, within his grasp, and with his last bit of strength he could avenge his mother. Mikasa tried desperately to free herself from the Titan grasp, trying to slice off its fingers with her dull and broken blades. The Titan slowly opened its jaw, ready to devour Mikasa. Without warning, Eren grabs the Titan's wrist and forces its hand away from its mouth. The Titan roared at Eren and Eren roared back. The 12-meter Titan bit into Eren's shoulder, trying to reach for the nape. Using his right arm, Eren pulled the Titan back, tearing off a chunk of his shoulder. He then chomped into the side of the Titan's neck, using his last bit of strength to rip off half its neck. The Titan collapsed onto the ground into a steaming corpse while Eren's Titan fell to its knees, pillars of thick smoke emanating from its wounds. Mikasa limped towards Eren's Titan, the 15-meter monster breathing heavily and its body slumped forward. "Eren," she whispered. "I'm not letting you die here," thought Eren as he looked down at her. "I'm staying with you." The last Titan loomed over the two, staring at Eren's Titan and Mikasa. Eren looked upwards, coming face to face with the Titan that killed his mother. Hands felt a mixture of dread and anger as he caught sight of the Titan that killed Carla all those years ago, now looming over her son, about to eat him. "Oh God, no!" He quickly climbed up onto his horse and quickly grabbed onto the reins of another one. He whipped the reins of his horse and sprinted towards the two, hoping that it wouldn't be too late. The Titan then began to move its head forward towards Eren. With whatever morsel of strength he could muster, Eren let out a vicious roar while staring into the eyes of his mother's killer and swings his right hand towards the Titan's face. Reiner shook as he felt a surge of energy pass through him. Berthold gasped as the feeling of burst of energy coursed within him, and Ymir froze on the spot, shaking for a second as the feeling of being struck by lightning quickly passed her. In a cell inside Stohess, Annie suddenly felt an intense rush of energy run through her. She jerked forward, rattling her chains. "Hey, what's going on?" questioned one of her guards while the rest apprehensively reached for their blades. "Eren's the coordinate." The smiling Titan was thrown back away from them, crashing onto the ground. It slowly got back up to its feet. Eren let one final determined cry at the monster, "You are not taking another person away from me." Suddenly a large 15-meter Titan ran past both Eren and Mikasa and tackled the Titan back onto the ground. They both watched in shock as an ordinary Titan began tearing into another one of its own. Hans watched in absolute amazement as Titans ran past him and past the kids. It was as if they were just ignoring them. "What the dash?" yelled Armin as he, Connie and Sasha watched as the Titans ran away from them. "Honestly, I just don't know anymore and I couldn't give a shit at this point," said Connie as he turned towards his horse. "Let's get moving." "What the hell is going on?" said Ed as he, Al and Mina watched as the two Titans they were going to face off against run away with a stampede of Titans. Hang watched with a feeling of disbelief, amazement, and pure joy at the sight of Titan behavior never once seen before. "Holy hell!" she yelled, pointing at it excitedly. "Do you see that?" "Yeah, I see it," replied Levi. "Now let's get the fuck out of here." Grabbing onto a horse, he looked back at the sight. Even he was completely amazed at what they were watching. Eren burst through his Titan's nape and climbed down onto the ground. Mikasa quickly grabbed onto him, hugging him tightly. "Kids!" yelled Hans as he rode up to them. "Can you ride?" "Hans!" exclaimed Eren. "Yes." Hans tried desperately to hold back his tears, putting on a brave smile. "Good, now get on." Eren and Hans both lifted Mikasa before Eren got on. Quickly the three made their escape. "You two!" yelled Nanaba to Historia and Amir. "We have to move, now." "Yes, Ox," responded Historia. Amir watched as the Titans tore apart one of their own. Quickly everything became clear to her. Eren's the coordinate. Maybe there is a future for the walls." Reiner charged towards Eren and Mikasa as they tried to get away. "This is bad," thought Reiner. "Why'd the coordinate fall into his hands? Unless we capture it, we're all doomed. They're the last person in the world who should have that power." "Eren." Eren turned his head to face them. He pulled the reins of his horse, holding it in place. "Stay the hell back!" he yelled. That same burst of energy coursed through them once more. "You bastards, I'll kill you all." Suddenly the Titans who were devouring the large Titan with the wide smile quickly turned their attention to the armored Titan once more. Reiner turned to face the Titan horde heading straight towards him. Berthold. His thoughts solely on the safety of his friend. "I can't protect him." "This may be our only chance," said Erwin as he climbed onto his horse. "Soldiers, retreat." No one needed to be told twice. They quickly began to gallop away from the armored Titan as he was held in place by a horde of Titans. "Amazing," muttered Hang as she continued to watch wide-eyed at the scene while riding away with the others. "Squad leader, please focus on the escape," pleaded Moblet. Berthold slashed wildly at the Titans trying to grasp at him. They all stared at him with hungry eyes looking to devour him. Amir watched as both Reiner and Berthold struggled against the horde of Titans. If nobody intervened to save them, then they were as good as dead. "Someone, anyone, find us. I'm the only person who knows what you've been through," thought Amir as she watched them. "Amir," called out Historia, catching her attention. "Recruits, the formation is going and we're about to be left behind," yelled Nanaba. "Get moving." Amir ignored Nanaba. Instead she turned to Historia and gently ran his large finger along Historia's hair. Nanaba watched slightly apprehensive as Amir stroked Historia. "Sorry," the Titan croaked. Historia gave Amir a perplexed look. "What?" was all she said to Amir before her best friend ran off towards the armored Titan and the Titan horde. Nanaba grabbed the reins of Historia's horse, pulling her along while Historia stretched her arm out at Amir, telling her to come back. Under the midnight blue sky and the bright moonlight, the formation galloped back to Walrose. The journey was silent. No one spoke to each other, yet they clung onto one another tightly as if holding on for dear life. Eren looked off to the side. Alphonse held on to Ed, with Mina riding next to them. As the two rode alongside him, Armin held on to Jean, still in a daze, with Connie, Sasha, and Historia next to them, and behind them was Hans, keeping his eyes closely on them. So many people had to die to save him and Alphonse, but for just a brief moment he was thankful that all the people close to him didn't die today. Check the description for the links to the author.